Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson, live on YouTube, coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies, all brought to you by FanDuel, and it's a very special Check the Mic. We're here on a Tuesday morning, Sam, because we're going to be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all 4 days, because we got 32 teams in the NFL. We got 32 teams to fix, to get back on track, to rebuild.
Some of which will be easier than others.
Yes. Like Seattle. Good job.
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Not much to fix.
Hey, that's not always how it works with the Super Bowl. So, for those unfamiliar with the series, we started this a few years ago. We called it Fixing Every Team in 5 Minutes. The first show, we did actually intend on spending 5 minutes on every team, like a quick hitting. Hey, a couple free agents, a couple draft picks, boom, 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 we're done.
Yeah.
And then we started Miami Dolphins up first, and then it's like, let's get into this. We spent about 20 minutes per team, and then we stretched two shows into like 4. And here we are. So that's what we're going to do. The goal is 4 shows, 2 divisions per show. We aim for about 15 minutes per team. That puts you at a 2-hour show. We landed around a 2.5-hour show. We landed 15 to 20 minutes per team. We give every team the love that they deserve. And we go through cap situation, potential draft picks, potential free agents, re-signings, rebuild, fix every team.
Sounds easy.
In 5 minutes. Sound good?
Sounds simple.
Are you ready to go?
Yep, let's go.
We got to stay on point. There'll be no ranting. We're just going. Here we go. It all starts in the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills coming off of another slight disappointment here, Sam. Another slight disappointment here. That says the Dolphins, but we're the Bills. There we go. We got it. The Bills in 5 minutes. How are we going to do this? We are going to get them to the Super Bowl. Get the Bills to the Super Bowl. Disappointing divisional round loss for the Bills this year. The big things to sort out for right now, first off, new head coach, Joe Brady coming in. No more Sean McDermott. Jim Leonard on the defensive side of the ball. The question's going to be, what do they do from a defensive personnel perspective? And then the O-line. As of right now, things can move quick. But David Edwards and Connor McGovern, 2/5 of their offensive line, are unsigned, hitting free agency. We'll see if they can retain one or both. We'll see what they can do up there. But they've had great continuity on the offensive line in recent years.
Yeah. Now, when we do this, are we ownership? Are we the general manager? What are we?
I think we're the GM.
Okay. So we're Brandon.
We're Brandon. I mean, if you want to be ownership, what are you going to do? You're going to fire Brandon?
I mean, I think that's fine. I think Brandon's done a good job.
No, we're playing GM here. We're playing GM. We're not firing coaches or anything like that. We know who we have from a coach perspective. We've already made that decision, sunk cost. So what can we do from an offseason perspective? The league year starts next week. What are we doing to get this team back on track?
Well, I still maintain that they have this wide receiver problem that they've had for years, this lack of an X receiver since they traded away Stephon Diggs. I think we need to find one of those guys.
Where are we going to get that guy? Mike Evans?
Mike Evans. Mike Evans would be an interesting short-term solution to that problem. Obviously not a long-term issue or a long-term solution. If Alec Pierce hits free agency, I think this is going to be a case for a lot of teams. If Alec Pierce actually gets let hit the market, I think he'd be an option, but I suspect the Colts are going to slap the tag on him and not let him out of the building.
The rumors coming out of the Combine are Mike Evans and Rashid Shaheed, and I know they had been tied to Rashid Shaheed in the past, and when they got Deontay Hardy a couple years ago from the Saints, I actually thought that was going to work out better for the Bills as the deep threat. Turns out Shaheed turned into a better version of Deontay Hardy, the punt returner turned efficient deep threat. I would like either one. Rashid Shaheed's more of a long-term, and it's not really an X-receiver solution. It's more of just a straight-up vertical threat solution, and I think that's part of the answer for Buffalo. It's the verticality of the offense with Josh Allen, his ability to get the ball down the field. They just have a whole bunch of horizontal playmakers right now, whether it's Dalton Kincaid, whether it's Khalil Shakir. And by the way, they're really good. It's not like when we speak about this, we often speak about the Bills like, oh, man, poor Josh Allen. He's got nobody to throw to. I don't buy that for one bit. They have good players to throw to. They have one of the best groups if you combine their slot receivers, their tight ends, and their running backs as far as pass threats. It's up there among the best in the NFL, which is why we always say X receiver. It's that outside threat. that they're looking for. They've tried a little bit of Josh Palmer, which, by the way, I think Palmer can be a contributor the same way Mac Hollins was a couple of years ago. He was just banged up last year. But I kind of like the Mike Evans short term. Like, X receivers don't just grow on trees, but if you have a chance for a 1 to 2 year flyer right now, while to buy you even more time to draft, I like the idea of Mike Evans, who may end up leaving Tampa at this point.
Yeah, he may. I still think the most likely thing there is that they let him test the market. You know, it's a figure out what the number is going to be deal from other sources, and then come back and see what we can do. I still think by far the most likely thing to happen is that Mike Evans end up back in Tampa Bay. I think both sides want that, but they're letting him test the market to figure out what that number is. I would be surprised if another team can pry him away, but I guess if they're willing to go to a number that Tampa Bay is not willing to go anywhere near, it's possible.
So my solution is going to be 1 to 2 year deal on Evans. Get that short term fix. Last year at this time, I thought the Bills did a really nice job adding defensive line depth, and then they literally went into the draft with one starting spot open, which was corner, and they filled it with a first-round pick in Maxwell Hairston. I would encourage trying to do the same thing this year. I encourage that with every team.
Yeah,
is try to get at least get the two, get the starting 22 as solidified as possible. I heard someone say, hey, if we could set it up so you could play a game next week. Could you play a game next week going into the draft? That's the ideal scenario. So how do we do that if we're the Bills? The 2 offensive line spots that are open, if they could come to an agreement with Connor McGovern at center, and then who's going to be this year's Morgan Moses for me? Isaac Seumalo, probably.
Isaac Seumalo.
He's gonna fill every left guard situation here.
I mean, the thing is, there's no reason the Bills can't bring back both those guys. Like, again, it's always going to depend what the market dictates. But if they don't, we would advocate finding a replacement for each one of those guys in free agency, right? At which point you might as well bring back the guy you have back in the first place. Sure, you might want to draft somebody and get younger and potentially cheaper, but not necessarily this year. I agree. I think a generally good practice is to go into the draft not needing a player, right? Obviously, you're going to want players that can then make you better and cheaper, but you don't want to be going in saying, we have to come out of this with a starting right guard, with a starting left cornerback, whatever. You want to be in a position where they're all set, and then you're just going, well, all of a sudden our left guard got better. All of a sudden our cornerback got better. All of a sudden our running back got better because we got these cheaper, younger players. So that's the thing. They're heading into this free agency period with 2 out of 5 spots on the offensive line opened up because players are hitting free agency. Re-sign them.
I mean, they're a little tight cap space-wise. Still have to get cap compliance, which everybody will. If someone's over the cap right now, they will be under the cap by next Wednesday. It'll all happen. Probably by Monday, to be honest, so they can make sure they get their legal tampering in. Mm-hmm. All the teams that might need a guard, Dalton Reisner is off the board now. The Bengals brought him back, but I like the buy low starter potential of guys like Isaac Seumalo, Tevin Jenkins, Dylan Parham. I think those guys all make a lot of sense because Edwards. The problem with re-signing Edwards is he's the youngest, most likely to get the 4 or 5 year deal at guard. Say 4-year deal for Edwards. I think he's going to be the most coveted, to be honest, of the free agent guards. And I think that could be out of their price range. So I'd go a little bit cheaper there, try to bring back McGovern at center.
The Bills do have, they need to get cap compliant, but they do have an absolute boatload of cash they can free up with restructures.
Yeah, so don't worry about the cap number right now. Now, again, most of the teams, if they're over right now, it's not like they're all of a sudden going to have $80 million to spend. It's usually not that drastic, but they'll be able to sign players. Defensive side of the ball, they did 1 year of Joey Bosa last year. Daquan Jones hits free agency. Have to get younger at linebacker, and Tre'Davious White also, free agent. Which they have Christian Benford, they have Maxwell Hairston, but White filled in well. So I think it's another depth play. But you got the question in different scheme coming in here without Sean McDermott for the first time in almost a decade, and then Jim Leonard coming in. I think are they going to play a little bit more man coverage? Are they looking for a different type of player? That's one of the questions as we hit free agency here for the Bills.
Of their free agents that are hitting the open market, I think you could reasonably allow Joey Bosa to walk on the basis that he really declined late in the season. And unless they're willing to do our game plan of just bubble wrap him for like 8 weeks, which doesn't seem likely.
Load management.
Yeah, which doesn't seem likely. Doesn't seem like something they want to do. Then I think he's just not going to make the impact that they wanted him to make. So I think you can let Bosa walk. You can let some of the sort of depth pieces on the defense walk. And then Tre'Davious White would be the only other interesting one, whether you want to keep him or let him hit the open market off the season that he just had, which was kind of a surprising resurgence from him.
Every contending team is going to ask the Max Crosby question. And I think the Bills, they may not have the same flexibility as some other teams, but the Bills have been, seemingly in need of that impact pass rusher opposite Gregory Rousseau. So you tried Bosa for a year. I don't think they're in the Crosby market. I feel like we need to say yay or nay on a lot of these teams. I would not do that if I'm the Bills. I think you have to keep the draft capital intact. I do wonder about Trey Hendrickson in free agency, though. Could they go that route? So Odafe Oweh is the biggest, youngest name that will hit free agency, and I think we'll place him with a couple potential teams here. I don't think the Bills would be one of them, but is Hendrickson the type of player that you try to grab for a couple years at age 32 here to play opposite Rousseau?
Maybe. I mean, an interesting thing with them is going to be, okay, they made a significant course-changing move for the first time in an offseason in, years of banging their head against a brick wall at the same sort of point in the playoffs, right? They finally decide, okay, something significant does need to change, and apparently the thing that needs to change is Sean McDermott getting fired. Does that mean they're also now open to a world of more aggressive moves that they haven't necessarily made in the last few years in off seasons, right? Are they going to swing for the fences in a major way on the roster as well as swinging for the fences in terms of making a major shift in the front office?
Yeah, we've always said stay the course. And so this isn't leaving the course, right? The fact that I like the idea of elevating Joe Brady and having consistency on the offense. There'll be some differences schematically, defensively, but it's still like very much the same nucleus here. Got to get at least one of those offensive linemen back and then defensive line depth. I'll also say if we get to the draft, I mentioned yesterday in the mock draft, the more I watch Dylan Thieneman and knowing, I think how inconsistent some of the Bills' safety play has been in recent years. I really love that fit. It might, I don't want to say it's like a luxury pick, grabbing a safety in the first round when you probably need some defensive line depth. I really like that playmaking fit, though, for Buffalo and what they're going to be trying to do on defense. So we can talk draft in a second, but defensive line depth, I don't know if they had to make a splash play, because the splash plays are A.J. Brown, Max Crosby from a trade perspective. I don't know if I want to go the A.J. Brown route or the Max Crosby route if I'm the Bills. I don't know if they need that level of impact, but if they could get, even if they got to pay for Trey Hendrickson in free agency, I think you at least explore that. And then, as I'll say with everybody, second wave of free agency is going to be crucial here as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, you got to figure out, are you either bringing back your interior offensive linemen or are you going to try and get cheaper ones in free agency? I don't know particularly with guard, I think there would be some options you could get potentially cheaper. Dylan Parham would be an interesting reclamation project given he came from the Raiders. Like, he's shown flashes where he's been okay, and then that entire offensive line kind of fell apart, and he didn't play well in that situation. But Parham's a guy that on a better offensive line, I think, could actually turn his career around and kind of suddenly look good again.
I like that.
Presumably would not cost very much money given the current state of his career.
They have 7 picks, all 5 for first 5 rounds, 1 per, and then 2 7s. So draft-wise, I don't mind Denzel Boston at the back end of the first 2, which we did of the first round, which we did yesterday. I think Thieneman could be in play at safety. I think Denzel Boston could play the X for them. So I think both of those guys are in play, and they got to go back last year grabbing Deion Walker and the 3 defensive linemen that they picked, rounds 2, 3, and 4. T.J. Sanders could still add more depth there. Who's the kid from Arkansas? Big guy. Landon Jackson last year. So they had 3 draft picks last year on the D-line. You've got some older players moving out, so they already started the youth movement. This is what I'm saying. Like, I think the roster's in a pretty good spot. I think a lot of people have been all over Brandon Beane and acting like it's not a great roster. I think it's still a top 10 to 12-ish roster.
Yeah.
Outside of the quarterback. The quarterback obviously impacts the roster in a massive way. But continue to add more defensive line depth. The one splash play I don't think can be too splashy as far as giving up draft picks. It's got to be a free agent move, whether it's Trey Hendrickson, whether it's Mike Evans. I think you could grab one of those guys potentially and then continue to build the depth on the defensive side of the ball.
The other X factor out here for a bunch of teams, I think, will be what do you do with Brandon Ayuk? Like, Brandon Ayuk would be an interesting high risk, low potential cost gamble for a team that's in need of a wide receiver. Like, does Buffalo go, we need a wide receiver? You know, Mike Evans is going back to Tampa Bay. We don't love any of the guys, the rookies that will be available somewhere towards the bottom of the first round. Brandon Ayuk could step in and from day one be a top 10 wide receiver, and maybe it won't last very long, right? But if it doesn't last very long, like, it's kind of like the rental that Diggs has turned into, right?
Do you bring Stephon Diggs back for a year?
Right. I mean, I'm assuming they don't want to do that on the basis they shipped him away in the first place.
Yeah.
But you almost treat Ayuk in the same way. It's like you bring in Brandon Ayuk, assuming it won't last longer than a year. But for that 1 year, you might get a top 10 wide receiver with his head screwed on right, you know, wanting to prove everybody wrong, or it might blow up in your face in 6 minutes, and who knows. But depending on what that asking price is, and I have no earthly idea how that trade is going to function because, I mean, they can't bring him back. They've already basically said he's gone. So what could the value possibly be for a guy who basically abandoned the team and walked away? It can't be much at all. But, you know, the flip side of that is who actually wants to opt into something like that. I mean, he may not play next year at all, but a team like Buffalo in need of wide receiver help, I'd at least be talking about it in the building.
Of all the teams where Brandon Ayuk, you might kick the tires, as Buffalo one. You wouldn't do it everywhere, but given the closeness year over year to getting over the hump, might be it. Might be the team.
Look, it's, you know, you get these the kind of strategy meetings. You're like, you know, no idea is too stupid. Everybody, think outside the box, right? I mean, it doesn't get much more stupid and outside the box than bringing in Brandon Ayuk fresh off the bank of abandoning his team and, you know, just bailing on it. So,
all right, we've given Buffalo some options. Are they fixed? We're right up against 15 minutes. Are they fixed? Anything else that we need to? Oh, this is. Didn't know we were going to have a legitimate. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we either bring back our own offensive line free agents. You try and get a bit cheaper, maybe in free agency. The depth, I think, you build throughout the draft. The receiver thing, you definitely kick the tires on Mike Evans. You see if they're willing to do something like that for a short-term deal. If not, maybe you're looking at the draft and see if you get a Denzel Boston. The Ayuk thing, I don't imagine that happening soon. So maybe that's like last resort. If you don't get Mike Evans, if you don't get someone you like in the draft, well, hell, let's see if Brandon Ayuk's available.
One other thing I'd add is maybe a bigger-bodied interior defensive lineman. For the 10th straight year, we predict that for the Bills. Don't know if that's what they actually want, but always feels like, I could do a little better job holding the point up front. All right, Buffalo, fixed. We're on to the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins coming off of both general manager Chris Grier and head coach Mike McDaniel getting fired. We're going to fix the Dolphins with a whole new regime coming in from the Packers. John Eric Sullivan as the general manager and Jeff Hafley as the head coach. Bobby Slowick, old friend, going to become the offensive coordinator. They were 7-10 last year. Started out really slow, showed a little bit of life in the middle of the season, really against an easy schedule. And you see the draft picks there, 5 in the first 3 rounds, including the 3 third-rounders, pick 75, 87, and 90. So they've got some draft capital to work with. Pick 11, where most people are pegging them to take a corner.
Yeah.
Every time, because it's a very specific situation, every time we talk Dolphins, I feel the need to just rewind a little bit and say, how did we get here? Well, since 2022, the Dolphins have drafted fewer non-QBs than any team in the league by a mile. And the team that has drafted the most, I just put QBs in a different bucket, the most non-QBs is the Packers during that time. So the Packers, high volume drafting. The Dolphins, They went for it back in 2022. They said, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, we're going for it with the rookie contract Tua. It didn't work. I mean, it made them better. It didn't work as in it didn't lead to a playoff win or a Super Bowl. It did make them better, but that's why we are here at this point right now. So the Dolphins, a depleted roster after going for it for a few years. And then it's interesting to me bringing in the Packers regime that was the high-volume drafting team. I think that's the starting point for getting the Dolphins back on track.
Yeah, I think it's a classic case of what happens if you put too many eggs in one basket and don't diversify, what you're doing from a personnel standpoint, and it doesn't quite work, and it didn't quite work, and so suddenly you just don't have the young players, and for the second year in a row, you're looking at this depth chart and being like, their top cornerback is Storm Duck. It wasn't a good thing last year. It's not a good thing this year. So I agree with the consensus that if there's any possible way they draft a corner with that first pick, that's what they're going to be doing. It's by far the most popular consensus pick in various mock draft sims you're going to find is them taking maybe the top corner on in the entire draft, or certainly the top on the board when they pick. I think it makes a ton of sense, but they have a lot of needs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, corner's the cleanest one, because I think when you're doing a mock draft and you're sitting there at 11 and you're like, hey, this is where a lot of these corners are projected to go, and it was a massive need last year and it's a massive need this year. No offense to Storm Duck.
It's the most obvious need because, with all due respect to Mr. Duck, they might not have a viable cornerback on the roster
but
at the moment.
The thing I want to lay out here is just high level. Here are the needs for the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill's gone, so you have Jalen Waddle at receiver. So wide receiver 2 and 3 is a need beyond Jalen Waddle. Darren Waller, tight end, gone out there right now. Tight end's pretty much a need. Offensive line was not good for a few years now. Patrick Paul did a nice job at left tackle last year. Aaron Brewer did a nice job at center.
2/5 of it are now in
You could argue,
solid shape.
right, 3 spots, and we've been, low on Austin Jackson for years. He's been a fine, okay starter. So, but they need upgrades, at least 3 out of those 5 spots, at least 2 of them. Quarterback is a massive question mark right now. We don't have a quarterback, which we'll come back to in a minute. And then defensively, they were weak up front, and they underachieved on the defensive line. Bradley Chubb is gone. Jalen Phillips, he's not officially gone.
Likely cut candidate,
right? Jalen Phillips is gone, traded last year. They drafted 2 defensive tackles last year in Kenneth Grant and Jordan Phillips. They didn't look great, especially Grant for a first-round pick. And then the entire secondary with Minka Fitzpatrick's back there in the Will Smith, end of Fresh Prince meme. I'm all by myself. All the starters are gone. So the needs are plentiful in Miami.
Yeah.
So this is what I love about.
They don't have a ton of money. I mean, they can free up a lot of cash with restructures and stuff, but I don't know that they're going to be.
I don't even want to go that route. I want to play.
Spending.
So this is what I love about this. Like with the Bills, you're working toward a slightly different goal right now. It's like, how do we get over the hump to become a Super Bowl, contender or participant for the 5th, 6th straight year? For Miami, we got to start slow here. And knowing that it's the Packers regime, draft and develop and don't break the bank in free agency, I wouldn't hate if the first year or 2 looked a lot like Nick Casario's first year in Houston, first couple of years in Houston, where it's like a couple special teamers, some depth pieces. Don't break the bank in free agency. You got to get the nucleus back on track with the youth movement.
Yeah, but you need so much. You got to go bringing in veteran players as well. I mean, they need to bring in 10 players in free agency, just not spending none of them are going to be the top player on the board.
Yeah, I just don't go. We're not going big name free agency.
Right. Just pick your favorite 10 players you think can come in and upgrade this roster.
What do we want to do at quarterback if you're Miami?
I mean, you're kind of stuck still for a year or so, right? I don't know what it's kind of like the Browns last year, where it's like, what's the worst possible quarterback we can sell the fan base on being able to get through this year with, right? Like, can they go into this year? Tua's done, right? Like, he's not starting anymore based off the way that ended. So
we could potentially pay Tua's contract for someone to take him and give us a draft pick.
I would just eat it for a year.
Or you'd have to give up a draft pick to have someone
I'm not even getting rid of him. I'm just dealing with it for a year. So the question is, can you sell the fan base and starting Quinn Ewers for a year, or do you need to go and actually find yourself a theoretically viable bridge quarterback?
Man, we can't. we can't advocate tanking here, but it's a multi-year process. It's a full. It's not even a tear down. It got torn down. Like, it just, everybody, Ramsey got old and then traded, and Tyreek got old and then hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just everything that you went for is now gone.
Would Kirk Cousins enjoy the Miami sunshine?
Not without people to throw to.
No, well, he's got Waddle.
He would need more than that.
I mean, you can throw 100.
He'd at least get the weather. I don't know if he might be a little afraid of rain or whatever, but he needs pristine weather, pristine receiving core to go. That's the only place Kirk Cousins goes.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be his choice.
Yeah. Do they go after Malik Willis, or is it too early here? You've
No.
got the Green Bay connection.
Yeah.
Would they go that route?
I mean, if they're going Malik Willis, it's like that. Number one, if I'm Malik Willis, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't want that job relative to other jobs you might be able to get. Number two, they're so far away from this being useful that I think it's setting him up for failure. And then number three, the number for his contract would have to be low enough that they're even in the market for that. Like, you're still stuck with Tua for a year. There'd be some juggling involved in that contract unless his market is a lot softer than it potentially could be.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this as a 2-year process.
Right.
And it's not as simple as, well, the quarterback class is going to be better next year.
They're looking for their Joe Flacco this year, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Browns last year. The plan was to start Dylan Gabriel and Shador and see which one of these young guys showed anything, but you can't do that right off the bat. You know, Myles Garrett will be sad.
Jimmy
so you've got to start
Bobby Slowick reunion.
Right. So you've got to start Joe Flacco for a month just to pretend you're taking the season seriously, and then you can get rid of him and throw it to the rookies. That's what Miami's doing this year. So who is their version of Joe Flacco this year? It could, in fact, be Joe Flacco. He's not
Could be
busy.
Joe Flacco.
Maybe that's what he'll do. Joe Flacco's just the sacrificial lamb for teams now for a month that are like the teams that are tanking but can't say it out loud.
But he's becoming
Joe Flacco's
tank-proof.
that.
He's becoming tank-proof. He's too good.
I mean, he wasn't for the Browns.
Well, the Browns were a special case. Dolphins have to think of this as a 2-year deal, and it's not as simple as, well, I know all the quarterbacks in next year's class. Of course, they'll be better. It's just by the law of averages, it'll be better next year because usually there was 6 drafted in the first round a couple years ago. Then there was only 2, and now there's probably only 1 or 2. At some point, it gets back on track. People break out. You're probably in a better position to draft a quarterback next year. I think you just kind of let that play out. I don't know if I'd go the Malik Willis route because the foundation for this roster just isn't there. So the specifics for the Dolphins are kind of broad. They're not very specific. Draft a whole bunch of good players. Get this thing back on track. I'm good with going corner high. I am good with a couple defensive line selections along the way here in rounds 2 and 3. But you just got to add depth. Take a shot on another receiver to pair with Waddle. That's the other thing, too. All the reports coming out that, hey, they're going to lock up Waddle and HN, and they're going to build around those guys. And I think that makes perfect sense. They have Waddle, for the foreseeable future. Lock up as in not trade. Like they were thinking about trading him at the trade deadline last year. I'm keeping Waddle around. I'm keeping HN around. And they just don't have many foundational pieces beyond them. Patrick Paul, again, showed stuff at left tackle. Who else are you building around in Miami? They need building blocks, and that's going to happen through the draft.
Yeah. And again, it's a good thing that they actually have the ton of draft picks this time so they can actually theoretically go in that direction. But they need them, and they potentially need even more, either trading down, either trading more spots on your roster, like instead of cutting him, if they could trade Bradley Chubb, or just keep parlaying it into the future as well.
So if they went Mansour Delane or one of those, or Jamad McCoy in the first round, second round wise, I don't know if, even getting like a Chris Bell at receiver coming, it doesn't have to be second round, but getting, I would say Miami's in the position to take a chance on, say, some of the injured players because we're taking a multi-year approach here. Mm-hmm. And, someone who's coming off of injury whose stock might drop a little bit, Chris Bell, who probably would have definitely gone in the second round. He's 50th on the consensus board. Maybe he ends up being available with one of those 3 third-round picks. You take a flyer on him. I think you have the ability to think long-term if you're the Dolphins, and that's what I would suggest here from my desk.
Yeah, obviously it's difficult to project second and third rounders based off having no idea who's going to go in the first round, et cetera. But
that was one that I'm trying to
Yeah, you
look
can.
to.
I mean, there will be, I would say, second-round corners as well available. Like a Chris Johnson or a Brandon Cisse might make it to your pick in the second round. Them doubling up corner 1-2 would not be crazy based off their current cornerback depth chart. I would imagine there will be interior offensive linemen potentially available in the second round as well. We talked about Emmanuel Pregnon before, the giant Oregon guard. He might make it to their second-round pick as well. I think that's a reasonably likely thing to happen. So cornerback, interior offensive lineman in the second round, defensive lineman, you're going to need to replace a Bradley Chubb, even though he's not been the best player in the world for you, been solid. You're going to need the solid. So there will be second round edge rushers you could potentially go with. Those would be the types of players that I would be looking. And then you've got the 3 third-round picks, same thing. Like these are all those spots we talked about having problems with depth, those are the guys you're going to try and target.
Start take a few chances on the Chris Bells of the world who might drop. My suggestion.
And then, as we said, you're going to need to bring in 10 free agents that you like that don't cost very much.
Second wave of free agency only. The only players you might look at, younger players, 4-year type of deals. We said this with Houston when they were rebuilding. They didn't necessarily listen, but if you're gonna sign somebody, it's like the rare 25, 26-year-old free agents who
Nakobe Dean. Bring in Nakobe Dean, linebacker. I'm going to assume Leo Chanel gets more money than that, so I think he might be out of that market. But Nakobe Dean would be a guy I'd definitely be kicking the tires on and see if he can come in. Who else do I like from this free agent group that you'd be in?
Age-wise?
Yeah. Well, yeah, age, that kind of age, cheap, not particularly big name.
Lost track here.
There were a couple of those in the edge rusher.
Even like a Cameron Curl. Like you could get a Cam Curl's 27.
One of the Camerons.
Elijah Vera Tucker as a buy low at right guard.
I don't know if he's going to be buy low.
I think he's I'm assuming coming off the injury, but yeah, maybe that's just putting it out of mind for me. Zion Johnson's supposed to break the bank at left guard, by the way, at 27 years old.
Madness to me.
Okay, so maybe it's not a buy low for Vera Tucker, if it were.
Malcolm Kuntz is a guy I keep coming back to as an interesting player.
Yes.
Like he flashed for a while and then got hurt, didn't do it again for the Raiders, but like Young has shown the ability to rush the passer, probably won't cost very much. That's the kind of player.
All right, man. I think we fixed the Dolphins. It's a different discussion from a team like Buffalo, who we're talking about, like, where are these fringe pieces that are going to get us over the top? With Miami, I think it's about less specificity and more about let's draft. I got to turn that off. That's our cue, though. That'll be good to just continue to move on. Draft and develop, Dolphins, and I'm going to wait on quarterback. That's you solved in 5 minutes.
Easy.
This offseason. All right, New England Patriots are up next, coming off of a great season.
Yeah.
And remember, beginning of the season, we said, you know what, actually, if we go back to the archives, I repeat myself a lot, but I definitely said for New England, we both said wide range of outcomes, and we said Seattle, wide range of outcomes. We said for both teams, if they didn't do well or if they had a great season, like, wouldn't be that surprised. And look, New England, I think we capped them at like 10 or 11 wins.
11, I think, was what
at best. And clearly they surpassed that and did a great job, and they go to the Super Bowl. Let me start with this. The 14-3 Patriots, AFC champions. They've got cap space. They have a plethora of draft picks. Just the one mistake, which I don't think they're going to make, just listening to them talk. Don't feel like, hey, we made the Super Bowl, we're one player away. That would be the biggest mistake the Patriots can make right now. It's not as drastic as the 2022 Giants that we always reference, who just stumbled into a playoff appearance with Daniel Jones.
Well, they had the complicating factor of a quarterback that needed to be paid at that point. Like they got greedy. It's not so much that they got crazy and were like, let's go spending crazy. They had, a key player in Saquon Barkley hitting free agency, and then also Daniel Jones needed to be taken care of in some way, shape, or form. And because they made the playoffs, they basically got greedy and decided to do what they probably knew was not the smartest thing with Daniel Jones in an attempt to keep Saquon and try to have their cake and eat it. That was the mistake they made. The Patriots just don't have that dilemma because Drake May is heading into year 3.
So great job by Drake May playing well in year 2. We've got that foundational piece at the quarterback position. Just don't get into this mode. So I think I got asked at the Combine, are they in the Max Crosby sweepstakes? Now, they have enough draft picks that it doesn't completely deplete them. I don't hate it as a move, as long as it's not this move under, you can't give up a 1 and a 2. You can't give up.
That's what it's going to be, though. That's the thing.
You can't give up a massive haul for a Max Crosby.
Given what the compensation is going to be, I mean, we're fixing all 32 teams. Given what the compensation is going to be, is there a single team out there that you would make that trade for?
Probably not.
Right.
Because think about all the best teams. Maybe the Lions, but I doubt it. There's not many teams who are so strong in their nucleus right now. I think the Bills are honestly one of the closest teams, but they've got their own issues. The Eagles have issues. Think about all the strongest teams over the last few years. Seattle, they just won the Super Bowl, and they actually have some flexibility. Maybe they could. But I don't think I would. I know New England's going to be discussed because they were just in the Super Bowl, and hey, we just need this pass rusher. I wouldn't do that. I would continue this as we're rebuilding. Now, where you have flexibility is 2 more years of cost control to Drake May. You do have flexibility to overpay. That would be the one place where, like last year with Milton Williams, when you get down to the end of the negotiation and Carolina's offering 25 and you can offer 26 or whatever the exact numbers were, I'm good with that. You could still afford to do that if you're the Patriots, and I think that they were rewarded for that aggressiveness last year in free agency, bringing in Carlton Davis at corner and Milton Williams and Stephon Diggs late. They were rewarded for what they did last year in free agency. I think they have another year where they could bring in some impact players.
Yeah, the Seahawks would be an interesting one for Max Crosby. And then the only other interesting one, I think, is the Ravens, based off repeated swings and misses at the edge rusher spot that they haven't been able to fix.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it if I'm New England right now. I think
no.
You do have an edge rush situation. All the reports coming out of the Combine per The Athletic, they see edge rusher as their biggest need coming into this offseason. You have Kayvon Chason coming off of a really nice season. He'll be a free agent, as I mentioned on our free agent show, which you should check out to get ready for next week. He had 44% of his career pressures last year. He's got a 5-year career. And so if you can get him to come back on the cheap, I'm good with that. I don't know if I want to pay for the 1 year of production of Chason, but clearly edge rusher is a massive need here for New England.
I'm curious what the market will be for Jalen Phillips, where his number goes, but he'd be a really nice addition to this team based off what he showed at times in Miami and then for Philadelphia once he arrived.
They're also one of the teams, I'm an Odafe Owe believer. I do think he's all the teams that have a massive pass rush need and have the money to spend. And New England's up there. I mean, just looking at the high-end money to spend teams, Titans have a massive need there. Chargers are going to have a massive need there as Khalil Mack hits free agency. The Raiders, the Jets, Commanders. There's a lot of teams. But I would be in that market for Odafe Owe and be willing to pay him high-end money as he heads into year 6 here as an athletic, good pass rusher.
If this was the old days, the Patriot way, the Barbarian would be a perfect Patriot player.
Someone said he re-signed in Jacksonville, and it's not showing up.
Really?
Yeah. Someone tried to correct us that he was re-signed in Jacksonville. I hadn't seen that, but I know he's on the list, on the free agent lists everywhere.
Yeah.
Another Malcolm Kuntz potential spot here.
Malcolm Kuntz is this year's Morgan Moses. He's going to go everywhere.
He's going to be the guy. Khalil Mack yesterday said he's playing. He'll be 35. Is he a 1-year flyer? Now, he went back to the Chargers on the cheap last year, only $18 million last year for Khalil Mack, which was great. Can you do 1 year of Khalil Mack here? That's not a massive.
You could.
If you're the Patriots, when you're in this first contract window, you can afford, the 1 year overpay, so to speak, or the 1 year flyer, and you want to probably get somebody long-term as well.
I see no news, by the way, that Dennis the Barbarian has re-signed.
But then New England should go after him here. I like the idea.
I think if this was 2015 Bill Belichick's Patriots, you'd be like, the Barbarian is already.
Oh yeah, he'd be perfect.
He's suiting up, ready, and but it's not.
It's less exciting, but I think there's a good market of number 3 edge rushers. So if I'm New England, if you can get the high end guy, the number 3 guys that stand out to me, I mentioned Arden Key a lot, Joseph Asai, and AJ Epinesa. are all out there as these number 3/4. Like Abedessa might be a 4, but I think those are the type of depth pieces as you're trying to, get back to a Super Bowl that are really valuable. Again, unsexy type of picks, but you just kind of want those guys, that type of depth on the roster. I think one of the high-end players, though, Jalen Phillips, as you mentioned, is if the injury stuff checks out, only 2 out of 5 seasons above 800 snaps.
Right.
Jalen Phillips, I would be in the Odafe Owe running. And then if you had Owe and Milton Williams, there's thoughts around New England that the 2 players who are in potential legal trouble, Christian Barmore and Stephon Diggs, are going to be out. And so you probably need replacements for both players too if all those reports are true.
Yeah, it's funny that, last year it's like this team has no offensive line, it's got no receivers, and you still look at it and you're like, all right, they were way better, but they're still not great at those 2 position groups. Like, this team still needs offensive linemen, they still need wide receiver help, and in addition to that, they've got some other spots as well. So for a team that was in the Super Bowl, you can still look at this and say, there's still plenty you could add to this team.
From an O-line perspective, Garrett Bradbury still back. I would look into Isaac Seumalo at left guard, and kicking Jared Wilson into center, his college position. I think Seumalo is not a fit for every team,
right?
But he's a fit for pretty much every contender that needs a guard.
You're keeping Will Campbell at left tackle?
Will Campbell staying at left tackle. He'll be fine.
Got it.
He'll be fine. Yeah, he'll be fine.
Okay.
He didn't have a bad season. He was fine.
Mm-hmm.
He was a rookie left tackle.
So Wilson into center, Seumalo. And then Owenu at
and
right
then
guard. And then you just got the question mark at right tackle because the great Morgan Moses is currently a free agent, right?
But I'm seeing that on my roster, but I don't think he is.
Isn't he? What do you think he is?
I think they signed him to. I thought that he was on a multi-year. I don't see him on the free agent list. Whatever I'm looking at has something off. I think he's back. I'd future-proof that position, though. There was a false report, which I don't appreciate. What's that?
Even with the great Morgan Moses.
Yeah, I'm saying even with the great Morgan Moses, you might want to think to the future. I am not seeing him as a free agent anywhere. So, but I see on the roster that I'm looking at, doesn't have him at right tackle. I don't know if that's correct, though.
So when I pulled up the Google search and news, one of the first things is Morgan Moses has 1 foot out the Patriots' door after Super Bowl loss. So
maybe they're getting rid of him. But as soon as they get rid of him, that's the number 1 right tackle on the market for the next year or 2.
Patriots gave Morgan Moses a 3-year, $24 million deal with $11 million guaranteed to be a right tackle. Blah,
that's
blah,
what I
mean.
You bring him back.
Yeah, maybe he's just being assumed that they're going to cut him.
You just bring him back.
So bottom of the first round is an area where edge rushers often reside. TJ Parker from Clemson is a guy that gets talked about at that kind of area.
That was the name I was going to mention for that particular need.
It's also an interesting spot for, like, if any of the guys that we keep talking about in the middle of the first round, like if teams just decide they hate the fact that Mesidor is 25 years old, right? Maybe he ends up being available at the bottom of the first round. I doubt it, but, who knows? One of the guys like that, right? Offensive lineman, maybe. Like, that's going to be a weird spot for a lot of times. It's where your developmental tackles end up getting. Like, is there a guy there that they'd be pegged for it? Basically, there's going to be...
Before all the hype, I would have liked Monroe Freeling.
Yeah, now he's going to be like...
Six. I'll give you a couple other names.
Sure.
I keep mentioning Caleb Lomu from Utah as a developmental tackle, and he does have some reps on tape that remind me of Will Campbell, like just clean losses that aren't great. But I think at 6'6", 300+, got long enough arms, I think he has all the tools to be extremely good because he's young. He's a redshirt sophomore. All the tools to be very good in a couple of years. So I think Lomu, if he's there, if you do want the developmental tackle, sit behind Morgan Moses for a year, take over at right tackle. Omar Cooper Jr., I love for the teams that need receivers in the back end of the first, whether it's San Francisco, the Rams, the Patriots, the teams that have late first-round picks. Love Omar Cooper Jr. as a fit there. And you mentioned TJ Parker. He would be the guy, if he's going to go in like the 20 to 40 range, I think that could be really good late first-round value for New England there.
Second round, you could get a guy like Chase Basantis, the Texas A&M interior offensive lineman.
So there's your guard. You kick Wilson inside.
Yep.
I think Wilson at center long-term is probably a better play. He got beaten up cleanly a little bit too often at left guard.
Or potential second-round edge rusher, a guy like the dentist. deny Dennis Sutton.
I like
who
it.
had an insane combine Penn State edge rusher. So guys like that, I think, are second-round options for them.
Some good options there. Christian Gonzalez heading into his last year, one of the big discussion points in New England. Do you lock him up long term? How do you feel about?
Yeah,
Gonzalez?
I was asked on Phil Perry's show about that. I don't see any. And the only thing that would stop me doing that is if your doctor's like, no, the dude's leg's about to fall off. If he checks out medically, if there's no like long-term problem there, I don't see any reason you wouldn't lock him up long-term and make him one of the best paid cornerbacks in the NFL. And that's coming from somebody that didn't love him as a prospect coming out. He's become the player that, the people that liked him as a prospect were talking about. He's added the ability to play the football, the ability to actually stop receivers catching it, in addition to just being in tight coverage and the fluidity of movement, et cetera. He's a really good corner. I don't understand why there would be any hesitation.
I'm with you. I would re-sign Christian Gonzalez, absolutely. The only other options that I would just think about in free agency, Josh McDaniel's system, they've had runs where they really like to isolate work with 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. Dallas Goedert, as he gets into his 30s, is going to be gone from Philadelphia, not returning to Philly by all reports. Dallas Goedert to combine with Hunter Henry, maybe for a year as a 1-2 punch.
Receiver, I still think it needs work as well. Again, who knows what's going to happen with the Stephon Diggs thing, but generally speaking, teams treat Stephon Diggs as a 1-year deal anyway at this point. So he was an important player for them. You kind of need to replace that. Booty has shown a lot of nice things. Kyle Williams didn't get used much last year, but I think there's still something there. A player I think that would be a really interesting ad for them is Romeo Doubs from Green Bay. I don't know if he's ever going to be more than he was in Green Bay, but from the Patriots' perspective, they're one of the teams where even if he isn't, that's perfectly fine. Like if Doubs just steps in and is a very reliable receiver for them and then occasionally will drop a couple of passes and occasionally will threaten to be more than that, that's still good from their perspective. They have space for that player.
And the question's going to be, if you added a Dobbs who's like a 2 and Booty's probably a 2 and Mac Hollins is kind of, I like how they call him the sacrificial X. He'll have some big games, but he's not a go-to guy. The next question is going to be like, do you need an alpha?
Right.
Dobbs is not an alpha in that room. I thought you were going to say Jawan Jennings.
Nope.
Who doesn't necessarily fill that, but I think that would also be a good fit. So I think there's a combination of a Dobbs or a Jennings in free agency that they can afford, plus letting the draft fall to you either late first or in the second round, where there'll be some good value there at receiver. So I think we've given a lot of options here for the Patriots. Fixed in 5 minutes. Anything else on New England?
No. Again, Mohal says they'd be an Alec Pierce landing spot as well. They would, but I generally am assuming that Alec Pierce is just not going to hit free agency.
Everybody in Indianapolis is like, they're trying to work out, is he the franchise tag? What do they do with Daniel Jones? They're expecting to get both back, I think.
Yes. Anyone that needs an outside potential deep threat receiver is going to be in the Alec Pierce marketplace, but I, again, don't really think he's going to hit the market.
All right. Patriots fixed. It's New York Jets time to wrap up the AFC East. Fixing the New York Jets. They have the number 2 pick in the draft and the number 16 pick. And let me just start with this. I think they're making a lot of the right moves as far as tearing it down. And there's rumors that any other good player on the roster could be traded as well. Other than Breece Hall, all the reports coming out of the combine,
right.
they're
it's
bringing
like
Breece back.
Tear everything. Everyone's available except him.
We will, whether it's franchise tag, transition tag, long-term deal, it's all on the table. But Breece Hall is coming back. 3-14 last year. Of course, they've got cap space, plenty to work with. But same question: where do you want to deploy those resources? 4th in effective cap space at the moment. 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, and of course they have 2 first-rounders next year. So not just flexibility this year with all of their draft picks, 10 total, 4 in the first 2 rounds, but next year as well. Do you start to maneuver the draft a little bit if you're the Jets?
And it's interesting because you can see sort of how far along the process they already are of tearing it down. There are some other teams that don't have a lot of cap space at the moment, or don't look like they do, but have an absolute boatload of restructured contracts that they can then go and free up $60-70 million. The Jets already have the $60-70 million, but they don't have that much ability to go and create money with restructures because they've already done this stuff, right? They've already like ripped out the contracts that they want to get rid of. They've already done a lot of that work. So it's just funny. Like the Jets look like they're swimming in money relative to some other teams, and yet they're actually probably in a very similar place to some teams that just haven't done the work to get there yet.
Let me start with this because we're playing GM.
Yes.
The one thing that has to be challenging in a building is if the head coach feels like it's boom or bust this year, right? Like show signs of life or you're going to be gone. But Muji, the GM, probably sticking around, right? Because everything he's done has been long-term. The front office is thinking long-term. The head coach always has to win and show signs of life. It's a tricky balance. So the one way to navigate this and to suggest to the front office is how do you simply find scheme diverse, good players? In other words, they want to play more. They want to go to more of a 3-4 this year. Aaron Glenn's calling plays. How do you balance finding all the players that Aaron Glenn wants to fit his system, while in the back of your mind knowing we're going to have one of the worst rosters in the NFL, and it's very likely that it's another 3 or 4 win team, and that perhaps Aaron Glenn doesn't survive the season.
Yeah.
And if you make every move around his needs and wants, then you're sitting here a year from now and saying, oh, we've got a completely different system in here, and how do you navigate that? So to this point, I think the Jets have done a great job thinking long-term. It's not like a full Madden rebuild where you get rid of all the good players for draft picks, but it's like that type of concept, which is fascinating. You don't always get that in the NFL. I suggested to the Raiders in this process multiple times over the last few years, you're thinking 2 years out, maybe 3 years out. Every move you're making is 2 and 3 years out, which is tough to do in the NFL. And as soon as I said that, in 2022, the Raiders went and traded for Devontae Adams. And last year, as soon as I said, you're in this loaded division, the AFC West, you're thinking about 2026 and 27, and they go and trade for Geno Smith. And the Jets aren't making that mistake. They're not saying, let's do this competitive rebuild. They're saying 26, 27, that's when we compete. And every move this free agency cycle, and of course in the draft, has to be pointed toward those years. And I think they're doing it to this point. So I'd say stay the long-term course if you're the Jets here.
Yeah, it's got to be a weird spot because even Aaron Glenn can't feel great about his position. Like, if he's being honest with himself, does he even expect to be there this time next year? Or is he like looking around the room being like, there's not many people left from when we were doing this a year ago. And, so I think you're right. Like they almost have to be assuming that they're going to be looking for a head coach next offseason, at which point you can't build the thing, scheme specific. Which they did a bit last year, like looking at some of the players they brought in, guys like Azariah Thomas at cornerback is very sort of man-specific type of coverage guy, with Aaron Glenn coming in to run a man-heavy type of coverage scheme from Detroit.
And Young.
Right.
A long-term play there.
But, that's probably not happening anymore, right? Like, if they're going after cornerbacks, they're not going, he was the most, man-cover corner we could find. It's like, no. We're going to go for a guy that can play both.
And look, I don't know if this is going to happen in the building. Like, there's a human element here. No one's going to be like, hey, Aaron, we're not going to listen to you. But I think it's a tricky balance for the Jets here. My point is, though, draft good players. Always comes down to just get the good players. The quarterback decision is the other one, right? I mean, I said this last year. Given the situation, the Justin Fields signing was perfectly fine, right? It didn't work.
Yeah.
He wasn't great. He wasn't even that much worse than he was previously, but he didn't take this big next step forward that people were hoping for. And that's okay. You can't be, you idiots, you went after Justin. You thought Justin Fields was going to save the franchise. No, they didn't. They signed him to the lowest end starting deal in the league with no other options. They had no one to draft, and they were in a rebuild. And so I think you got to do that one more year because they're rumored to be Kyler Murray. I mean, look, if you can get the most out of Kyler Murray and then use all of that draft capital to build around him, that's an intriguing option for the Jets. But I still think you want to be in a good position to draft a quarterback next year, to the point where I might take pick 16 and try to I might want to have 3 first-rounders next year.
I would take, not pick 16, I would take, because they pick 33. They're the first pick of the second round, which is the money pick, right? Like that's where everyone maneuvers at the end of day one. It's like, oh, let's see what the board's fallen, who's still available, who's the big prize that fell out of the first round that someone's going to fall in love with and go try and get. That pick at the top of the second round, I think, is the one that's got some real value to it. I would be trying to flip that, whether you can get something out of next year for it. Next year's first out of somebody, probably not, but maybe you can get another, couple of early picks either in this draft or next year as well. That's the one I'd be looking to flip.
You have the job security to do that. I think if you're Muji as GM, I think you have the job security to care about next year and to put the organization in a great position next year. So having 10 picks this year, 4 in the top 2 rounds, if you only pick 3 times in the top 2 rounds this year and at least get into even better position next year, I think that's the way to go. You just continue to multiply the draft capital. So that's part of strategy number 1 with the Jets. Multiply the draft capital even more than they already have. And I think giving up on trading Quinnen Williams and trading Sauce Gardner feels uncomfortable at the time. It leads to a season where they can't even pick off a pass, and they gave up 36 touchdowns through the air, and they got wrecked, and they looked awful. It's going to feel better in a couple of years. Probably. Probably. But the quarterback situation's the thing they have to solve first. I still think keep taking a long-term approach. I don't know if I'd go the Kyler route. I think I'd think about it. I think you got to put yourself in position to draft next year.
So who would your starting quarterback be this year?
Insert bridge quarterback here.
Right. Who is it for that?
Oh, man. Keep going back to Jimmy G. Are they Joe Flacco?
Can't keep.
Bring Flacco back?
God. Flacco.
Zach Wilson looks like a good project to
reclamation project.
Reclamation project. There's someone peppering us on social media that Mitch Trubisky is the next Sam Darnold. There is a Mitch Trubisky truther out there that every time I mention anything about Darnold or whoever, it's like, have you considered?
What must life be like?
Mitch Trubisky.
I am still not moving off my 2017 priors in the year 2026. I'm just waiting for it. Waiting for him to be the guy. Now, to be fair, you're only 2 years removed from that Darnold being that guy. But still, come on. How much evidence do we need before we're like, you know what, it's probably not going to happen for Mitchell? Because I'm there already, just for the record. I'm already out on the bisque.
You're not tanking, but it's a tough sell that, like, hey, we're not, we might not win this year. It's okay. Like, I don't care. Just get a bridge quarterback.
All right, here's what I did for the Jets in the draft, right? I just fired up a quick draft for them. I took David Bailey at number 2 overall. I took.
By the way, he's becoming the heavy favorite at 2 right now.
I took Venga Ioane it's pick 16 in the middle of the first round, fit one of my guard spots. I then traded 32 down to who did I trade it to? The Colts, who came up from 44. They gave me another pick in the top 3 rounds somewhere, 78, third rounder. I got Anthony Hill Jr. in the second round. I then got Chris Johnson out of San Diego State in the second round. And then in the third round, I got Jacob Rodriguez for my linebacker spot. So I'm happy with that. I think that worked well.
If Rodriguez is still – you have 2 starting linebackers, Hill and Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you can get 4 or 5 starters in this draft.
Yeah.
And so make sure you pick the players that I would suggest to you.
And then day 3, I guess, I would roll the dice on a QB.
Cole Payton.
What the hell? Let's grab one of these guys.
So the 2 things I would do, and look, I thought JT O'Sullivan had a great breakdown on Ty Simpson and would love to have JT on the show. I've given them, because you have the extra draft capital, I've given them Ty Simpson at 16 or thought about him in the second. I think you at least think about that, but one of JT's assessments there was, warm weather, dome, probably better for Ty, which I'm a big believer in that.
He's got all the negatives that like the Mendoza haters at least began with, and then I think are actually realizing aren't true.
Like, oh, by the way, you're 236.
Yeah. Like it's sort of, you just look at him and you're like, maybe he's not that big and doesn't have a great arm. And it turns out he's massive and 236 and actually has quite a strong arm. But all of those things actually do apply to Ty Simpson.
Right.
It's like you're actually quite small and only weigh 215 or whatever, and you don't have a great arm. And oh, by the way, you only played 15 games.
I would go for developmental. We're taking a swing here, and I'm assuming we're going to draft somebody next year anyway. Drew Aller or Cole Payton. Drew Aller out of Penn State, Cole Payton out of North Dakota State.
Cole Payton, I would have a look at.
That's the swing.
Even though he's lefty and therefore nobody can catch his passes.
Stop it. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous statement. Brunell didn't have trouble with that. Or maybe he did.
Maybe he did. Maybe Jimmy Smith's the greatest wide receiver in NFL history, and he spent most of his career being dragged down by Mark Brunell's weird spin and passes.
And Brunell's the greatest quarterback, but his numbers got killed. I mean, Keenan dropped a bunch of touchdowns.
There you go.
And he's awesome.
Why do you think that happened?
Man, I saw Keenan at the combine. I was like, I want to go say hi. He was talking. He was busy. Anyway, stay the course, Jets. 2027, 28. That's when we're trying to contend. Multiply your draft picks this year. Take a shot on a day 2 quarterback. Find three starters in the first 2 days. I like Bailey at 2. I'm good with that. Go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And bridge quarterback otherwise.
Not that we can come up with one of those yet.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy G in New England in that turf? Or not New England, New York in that turf?
Yeah.
Jimmy G he won't even make it. It'll be like Aaron Rodgers. 3 snaps in, his Achilles will just be like, nope.
Good point, Jimmy G kid. Flacco to the Jets. Flacco returns.
Right. Iron Man Flacco.
That's what we're doing.
Just go out there in New York, put your body on the line for 6 games, and then pitch it over to
develop your
Cole Payton.
2 drafted receivers that you have or whatever it might be. All right, AFC East fixed.
That was easy.
Ever want to go to the NBA Finals? Well, now's your chance, courtesy of FanDuel. All you have to do is use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. NBA futures let you lock in your pick for who you think will go all the way, whether it's a team to win the championship or a conference title. Visit FanDuel.com/33rd to get started. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino or 18 plus present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. No purchase necessary. Limit 1 entry for profit boost token. Opt-in required. Must apply profit boost token on select market. Restrictions apply. See full terms, including methods of entry at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org. In Maryland, Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Also, a quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage. When Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone's sensors, and after a few weeks, you'll get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in your car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You can get started today at Root.com. All right, we're on to the NFC East, starting with the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys, big offseason coming up here, most likely starting with George Pickens, franchise tag, discussions about what happens long term. But year 2 for Brian Schottenheimer in Dallas, coming off an 8-9 record. Got to figure out getting cap compliant and getting things sorted out. 2 first-rounders, though, coming off of the Micah Parsons trade.
Thank you,
However,
Micah.
That's all they have until day 3.
Yep.
So it feels like they've got draft capital, but no day 2, no round 2 or 3 picks. No day 2
and they
picks
do. It's
then.
just interestingly distributed, you know? Like they have 7 draft picks, but 2 of them in the first round, nothing on in day 2, and then the standard day 3.
I think it makes – look, Quinton Williams is a really good player, but it makes that trade feel less good when you're here. Now, maybe a full season of having him, you're going to feel better about that at defensive tackle. What are we doing with Dallas besides got a new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, coming over from the Eagles, whole new system, going to more of a 3-4. I'm hearing 4-3 and 3-4 more than I have in like
which is weird.
a
It's
long time.
Yeah.
In a really long time. To the point where the Titans should have mentioned the Jets trade for T'Vondre Sweat, by the way. I thought that was a good move. Apologies for not mentioning that. But I'm hearing this more and more now for whatever reason. There's still differences, but again, everybody lives in nickel.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have odd front. You still have different body types that you're looking for, but it's certainly not what it used to be 10, 15 years ago.
No, not at all. To the point where it is kind of strange to see it focused on again for an offseason. Dallas Cowboys currently have the worst cap situation in the NFL, just in terms of like how far over the cap are they. However, they also have the most money possible to free up in the entire NFL. So again, perfect example of looks really bad on paper right now, isn't actually very bad once they get around to doing all the work they need to do with the contracts that they currently have. They've already brought back Javonte Williams, who was one of their key free agents hitting this offseason. Reasonable amount of money, and by reasonable I mean not bad, right? Like from both, he got paid, but it's like $8 million a year, which for the season he had and his age, and if he's able to continue doing that, is not an unreasonable sum for him. So that's solid. You got the George Pickens deal you're working on. Again, Dallas, they don't tend to spend huge amounts in free agency, so I wouldn't anticipate them doing that this time around either. It's going to be on their own players.
You mentioned Leo Chanel earlier. I think that second wave. So keep an eye on the second wave of free agency with them, if anything, right? Resign your own. Maybe there's a second wave of free agency. I don't know what Chanel's going to make.
I kind of feel like he's going to get money.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are pretty high on him.
Okay. I mean, I think he's really good. He would, if he was cheap, I would go that route. What would you do with Pickens? So Javonte Williams back. Pickens is the only starter that is not even in limbo, but like we'll tag him. But are we going to go long-term here with Pickens? I
would try, just because I don't think he's going to love the tag. I don't love the idea of having to try and play Pickens this year on the franchise tag. So, yeah, I think the tag is just a protective move so that you don't hit free agency and buy yourself some time to get a deal done. But, yeah, I want to get the long-term deal done with George Pickens and hope that doesn't blow up my face long-term.
The offensive line, every starter returns. Mm-hmm. You have CeeDee Lamb at receiver. So let's sign Pickens. You want to sign Pickens long-term? We trust him?
No, but I want to sign him long-term.
Perfect. So we're just going to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's Jerry's money anyway.
Yeah. It's also the tags money.
We're Jerry Jones. We're playing GM.
Salary cap money.
We're Jerry Jones. We're Jerry Jones now.
Okay.
Just an overall team-building discussion, though. I was all for it with the Bengals going QB, receiver. I always say when you have the $50, $60 million QB, you have two more massive contracts, maybe three, that you can handle. And where do you want those deployed? And it's tough when it's not a tackle or whatever it might, it's not a pass rusher. And if it's two receivers, it's fine. If you can hit on draft picks elsewhere, I think you make it work. You have such a high floor for that offense with Dak Prescott throwing to George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And don't let the 8-9 record fool you. That offense was legit last year. And Dak had an excellent season. The defense was just historically bad for the first 10 to 12 games and got like slightly better, but not that much better. And that was the issue in Dallas. So let's keep that offense intact for the foreseeable future. And we've always said, look, Dak, he's generally had really good receivers to throw to. And I don't want to lose that. So let's play that game. George Pickens is sticking around. We got CeeDee. We've got Dak. We're going to have to pay O-linemen soon. But let's say the offense is intact right now, and then we put all our resources this offseason into defense. Cornerback is a massive need, and, of course, the edge rush situation. Donovan Ezeraku had a really nice rookie year as a second-rounder, but I think they need at least two more bodies on the edge to feel good about the defensive front.
Yeah, and they're going to need to do it, I think, in both free agency and the draft. It's going to be the classic, like Dallas is going to go into this draft with the need in the first round with two picks. They're going to need a corner and an edge rusher with those two picks. Yeah. And they're probably going to get them. I think it's going to work out reasonably well for them in terms of value, how the draft's going to fall, what the players are going to be available. But, for example, I just ran through a mock, and they got, Mansour Delane, the cornerback from LSU, and then Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher from Miami, at 12 and 20. I think that's a perfectly reasonable, some variant of that, whether it's McCoy, Delane, pick your corner at 12. If somehow somebody like maybe an Arvell Reese slides or a Ruben Bain slides and you like him at 12, get that guy and then come back and there'll be an Avion Terrell or whatever available at 20. I feel like it's going to fall so that they can come out of this draft the way they like to operate, which is we have 2 needs and 2 picks. It works great. Corner and edge rusher.
I think I think it could definitely work that with the name TJ Parker again. I don't know if Cassius Howell's in the mix at 20 any longer.
Right.
But
even if they do that, and I think like I would anticipate them now coming out of the draft with a corner and an edge from their first round picks, they basically only have like that guy and Azaraku under contract. Like almost they need to go find some bodies in free agency.
Yes, but again, they're not going to. They have not. They've. I think was it Jason Fitzgerald over the cap said whatever the time period was, the lowest spend in free agency was Dallas over the last 6-7 years. Whatever the time period.
They don't spend.
So it's just confirming. Like, we know this, but it's just confirming it. I know Cowboys fans can be frustrated by that, but part of it is, look, if they had kept Micah Parsons and paid him a ton of money, they would have a lot of money tied up in Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons. Now we're assuming it might be in George Pickens instead, but you do have this ability to get younger. I would be real interested if they didn't make the Quinnen Williams deal, what all that draft capital would do for them over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Because that's the bet that they're making was we're not going to pay the 40 plus for Micah, but we're going to have multiple young players to build around. And I know they're all mystery boxes and everything, but there's the financial component, right? It's all of the money that would have gone to Micah is going to go to re-signing your own, theoretically free agency, and then the youth movement, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So it's a big year in the draft for Dallas, obviously, with the 2 first here.
Bodies that I would bring in from free agency without much money. Victor Dimukeje. I would always have him on my roster somewhere.
You're a Victor guy.
Love that guy.
Arden Key.
Arden Key would be interesting. I would, Arnold Ebiketie I would bring in for this team.
Oh, I meant to mention him as the edge 3. The edge 3s that I think make sense for Dallas, too, the same names I mentioned for the Patriots. I meant to mention Ebiketie, AJ Epinesa, Joseph Asai, Arden Key.
Yeah.
One of those guys, because if you draft somebody in like Arden Key or Ebiketie's your 3, I think you're in a pretty good spot up front. It's not as sexy as like Micah Parsons is over there, but it's pretty good depth play there.
I'd also be curious. I'd at least be kicking the tires and find out. I'd be in the conversations with Bradley Chubb pending what his number ends up being. Like if his market isn't actually as strong as people assume it would be, like he's become a good player, but has never been the player that he was supposed to be when he was drafted, and there's a reason he keeps getting shipped away to various different teams. But like Bradley Chubb could start for this team. Suddenly that makes either Azaraku more of a designated pass rusher, or it means the guy you're drafting in the first round doesn't need to be great right away.
Right.
A guy like Bradley Chubb, it's probably more money than they want to spend, but might be the kind of signing that's worth doing to give you that kind of leeway on the defensive line.
What about at corner? We already talked about, let's probably draft one at 12. Deron Bland had a rough time of it last year. He's played much better football in the past. Siobhan Revel, not great as a rookie. Coming off of injury, I don't know how much to – I really liked him coming out, or at least I thought he was a good value in the 3rd round. We'll see if he could bounce back. So you at least have a young player to kind of hope that he develops, but I think you still might need to double up at corner, both in the draft or if you can get that second wave of free agents as well. Yeah,
well, as you say – the guy you're going to draft is presumably going to take one of your starting spots. Now, will that go great? Not necessarily. But, they're going to, I would imagine, work on the basis that that's going to happen. Revel's interesting because a lot of people really liked him. He was a sort of highly talented prospect, but he really did struggle last year.
He did.
I feel like Deron Bland is often better in the slot. So if you can find even just a guy who plays outside to let you kick Bland in, I think that's one of your spots. But yeah, they probably do need at least one more body in addition to the guy they're going to draft in the first round, a lot like the edge rusher spot.
Trevon Diggs is out there.
He is, yes. I suspect that's not the one they're going to use.
I don't know how old they want to get, but I always like, Rasul Douglas 1-year flyers for as a stopgap if you really need it. And curious what the market looks like for Eric Stokes, who's still only 27 and had a decent year for the Raiders in a difficult situation. So I'd at least explore some of those options at corner and free agency. Other question is going to be linebacker for them, where DeMarvion Overshown, showed some stuff, battled injuries the last couple of years, but they have probably 1.5 starting spots available here at linebacker. So I think that it's a deep linebacker draft.
It would be
a
great
deep free agent class.
It would be a great year to have a second or a third round draft pick for an off the ball linebacker.
I know
Unfortunately, they don't,
and that's why I wonder if they should be multiplying their picks as well. I mean, I say that for every team, but Dallas in particular with no day twos.
It's definitely. I mean, those are picks that like you feel not having a day two pick. Even if you have 2 first round picks, like you really feel sitting there for 2 rounds or an entire day on your hands with like, man, look at all these players that we really like and you can't get, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think if you could flip one of those, the problem is, again, this is a team that tends to operate along the lines of if we have a first-round pick, we intend to use that player day one, right?
But they could, when we talk about their needs, if you're ranking their needs, look, I don't think linebacker is as valuable of a position, but it's as high of a need as corner is, and maybe less of a need as edge, but it's probably up there. They could easily, I see the chat suggesting Sonny Styles at 12 if he was there. Either way, it's like 2-3 acute starting needs on the defense that they need to fill with 2 first-rounders and then nothing else. And that's the challenge. So you have to dabble in free agency a little bit more than they have in the past. There we go. Pickens is coming back. Dallas is fixed. Because we don't want to play whack-a-mole with even more. Then you need a receiver, too. On this roster.
And he was so good last year. Like Dallas likes rewarding their own players, even if their own player, was the guy they traded for and brought in last year.
And look, he's the reason that they don't have a 3.
Yeah,
I mean he's
the problem will be though. Jerry Jones has said this repeatedly. Now, look, if we were doing this, we would just do it. Because if we were Jerry Jones, right, that's the one thing he would change. It's like, look, stop screwing around with the contracts and just sign the guy, right? Jerry won't do that. Jerry will string it out. That seemed to cause problems with Micah Parsons, who reached a point where he was like, I'm done with this. Get rid of me. I'm not playing your stupid games anymore.
You mentally.
Right? He is. Like, Jerry treats this as if it's all good, right? The longer I string this out, and even from just a strictly math point of view, I think it's a bad approach. But his thing is, like, if I string it out as long as possible, the Dallas Cowboys are always in the news, and the Dallas Cowboys being in the news is good for us, right? It's good for the bottom line. That's how that's how we're America's team. That's how we get the advertising revenue. It's how we all make bank here. And okay, that may be true, but the longer you string it out, the higher the number ends up being that you end up paying, and that's a problem for the salary cap, right? So even from a strictly financial point of view, I think there are some flaws in his thinking. But what it does is completely ignore the human element, which is if you keep jerking these guys around for as long as you do, they might eventually just get sick of it and say, to hell with you. And that appeared to be what happened with Micah Parsons. If I was identifying one human on this roster who I would not want to start jerking around from a contract point of view, lest he get upset, George Pickens would be pretty high on my list, right? So that's the risk with this approach of we're going to franchise tag him, which tends to piss players off immediately, and then probably screw around with the contract to make it as long as possible. Like, that's your issue if you do that. Like, what if George Pickens reaches June and goes, burns the bridge and just goes, I'm out, Now you got real issues.
Well, we wouldn't do that as Jerry, so we've fixed the Cowboys.
Okay.
But keep an eye on
But Jerry might break them again.
But keep an eye on what's actually
once we turn the keys back over to Jerry. He's going to ruin it again.
Cowboys fixed. Let's go New York Giants. They're up next. John Harbaugh. What would John Harbaugh do?
John.
With full personnel control.
By the way, another great thing I noticed at the Senior Bowl, or not the Senior Bowl, the Combine. Remember there was the whole brouhaha about John Harbaugh getting final roster say, and that's not really a big deal. Don't worry about it. Even though, Joe Shane basically just had his legs chopped out from under him, and then, he just has to come and accept it. Somehow, Harbaugh's arranged this so that I have all say here. Like, I'm in charge, Joe. Thanks. You can just report into me and let me know who you think I should bring in, but ultimately I'm going to make the call. But John can still send Joe out to the media because he's the GM still.
Did John not do media? He did his head coach.
But the GM, like the guy, they sent Joe Shane out as the personnel guy to answer questions about, linebackers and whatnot. John's doing whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, of course.
Like you get to,
he's got the GM.
Even though he's the final say, it doesn't translate to I have to answer questions about your roster.
Yeah, because they need two people to hit the media and get out there.
It's just a great
Joe
system.
should have just said, I don't know, ask John.
Right. I don't have to say anymore. Ask the other guy.
Ask John what he
I just work here now.
Shane's still a part of the process and everything, but
It's part of the process.
final, it's more than just picking players.
He did not get a good grade in the leaked NFLPA report cards.
Shane?
Yeah.
At GM?
I think he was the second lowest.
It's from the players, right? So just
Correct.
The players are saying we just don't.
They're basically saying we think he's an asshole.
Yeah. Well, they said that more about some, like there were people that had Fs.
One person this year.
Chip.
Oh, no. So he was as a coach.
One GM.
GM, I think, was ranked lower than Shane. I think got an F.
Who was that?
I don't remember.
Probably got fired. Maybe not. Because the job isn't always just making the players happy. That's not always the job. Anyway, how are we fixing the Giants here? It's a unique spot coming off of picking at number 5 overall, which they tend to do every year, but having a little more optimism with Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors, because of their high draft picks over the last couple of years. You have Malik Neighbors and Abdul Carter, both as top 5 picks over the last couple of years, or Neighbors was 6. You got Dart at the end of the first round, and you have left tackle Andrew Thomas. So I keep citing that like some of these key positions for the Giants are in a good place. And you could make the argument that there is talent on this team. I think the Shane era would be characterized by they took a whole bunch of really good, solid players, did not retain them. Leonard Williams, Julian Love, players that went elsewhere, maybe won Super Bowls, but players who went elsewhere. So it kind of tore it down a little bit, but they've built it back up with some key pieces here. You bring in a Brian Burns. Kayvon Thibodeau might be on the way out, but had a pretty good few years there. So I don't think for a team that's perennially picking 5 and 6, I don't think it's completely depleted. You have Cam Scatteraboo coming off of his injury. It's not a roster completely devoid of talent.
No, it's not. I actually think the Giants are in pretty good shape. Joe Shane, in fact, was the lowest ranked NFL general manager with a D+, according to his players. So
Glad we got to the bottom of that.
Nobody ranked below him. No, I think the Giants roster is in pretty reasonable shape. Like I said, they get a lot of players back from injury, rather. Malik Neighbors, theoretically, is an absolute difference maker to that offense, a guy that can completely transform the entire unit. Jackson, a lot of it does depend on Jackson Dart continuing to, A, look good, and B, not injure himself out of the game on a regular basis. Like that's kind of a concern based off his rookie season. So if that happens and Jackson Dart actually, keeps developing and playing well and looking like the guy, well then Jackson Dart with Scatteraboo, with Tyrone Tracy, with Theo Johnson, I think has shown some things, with Neighbors coming back, with Darius Slayton still there, find a third wide receiver from somewhere, with an offensive line that's a work in progress but moving in the right direction. I think they want to bring back Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. I think that would be a good thing to do, just to try and keep as much solidity there as you can. And then keep adding some defensive talent. I think a lot of the young players on that side of the ball are good. The defense should have been better than it was a year ago in terms of personnel. So I would expect it to be better this year, even without adding talent to it. But yeah, I think the Giants could be a team that turns this around pretty quickly.
They don't have a round 3 pick, but they have pick 5, pick 37, first and second round. At pick 5, we've gone back and forth between a Caleb Downs edition. We were going to discuss Sonny Styles before we had him go super high in the draft yesterday. I think we landed on a tackle. And look, I don't think that's completely out of play, though I'd rather sign Illuminor and not have to force a starting tackle pick.
Yeah.
There's part of the idea of not need-based drafting. It's like if tackles are available, you almost have to take them when you have opportunities. It's like the Chiefs thing at 9. Like we don't have opportunities to draft starting caliber offensive or defensive linemen all that often, so you just have to do it while you're there no matter what you need. There is an element of that with the Giants, but I don't know if it's not like the offensive tackles are so good that you just have to get them. You just have to get them at 5. So take the best player. Take the best player. I mean, if Reuben Bain falls, is that way too redundant with what you already have with Brian Burns and Abdul Carter? Maybe.
No, because he's a very different player.
No, I know. I mean, there's an element of like, all right, good luck. I know I can move Abdul Carter around. Like, I'm tempted by all of that. The other part of the defensive line, Dexter Lawrence was a little banged up last year, wasn't as dominant as he was previously. Was that scheme? Was that usage? They still have not found that disruptive 3 technique to put next to him on the defensive line. And I'm not saying you do that at 5. I don't know who the player is there, but maybe at 37, if Peter Woods ends up falling at that point, if Christian Miller from Georgia is available there. I want a disruptive defensive tackle next to Dexter Lawrence, and I think second round might be a good place to get that guy.
Yeah, or also in sub packages, that's maybe where Reuben Bain can exist. Like Reuben Bain could be your 3 technique penetrating defensive tackle on pass rushing downs to allow you to deploy Brian Burns and Abdul Carter and Dexter Lawrence and Reuben Bain all in the field at the same time. Like, good luck stopping that. And then, you've still got rotation with Kayvon Thibodeau and Darius Alexander there as well. Like, there are that's some real horses on that defensive line. Again, I don't know how much Reuben Bain's going to slide because of the arm length stuff or just people not liking him as much as we do, but I would do that at 5.
Trade Kayvon Thibodeau at this point?
I'd certainly be open to anyone pitching me a trade.
I think I mean, I'm all about the defensive line depth, but heading into the end of his run here,
I'd also
with the
play
Giants.
him for a year, let him walk next year, and cash in on the comp pick as well. Like I'm just not extending him. I think is my.
I'm just thinking like we haven't. By the way, I would be all for Carnell Tate at 5. I'd be fine with that. I don't know if Giants fans would be that excited, but the idea of Malik Neighbors and Carnell Tate and Darius Slayton as your vertical threat, like I don't want Slayton as my 2.
Right.
I like him as my vertical threat. Let Wan'Dale Robinson walk, coming off a great year, fantastic. But I don't hate Tate next to Malik Neighbors here with Jackson Dart thrown to him and get Illuminor back, and that offense is in pretty good shape as far as people returning. But we haven't discussed Bain as a pick here. Man, when people say you literally can never have too many defensive linemen, I don't care that he's called an edge rusher. Like, I'm with you. Like Abdul Carter, Brian Burns. What Bain brings to the table when you talk about his power is something different that teams have to prepare for. If you had that level of something different, where Dexter Lawrence has a something different, and then Burns and Carter with their burst and their ability off the edge, I mean, forget the needs. I don't care, chat. I don't care about your needs. You never have too many defensive linemen. I would at least consider it.
Yeah, there's no way that this draft can fall, I think, at 5. The Giants don't end up with a very good player at a position they can make use of. Maybe Reuben Bain is that guy if they decide that he's awesome and he can be used inside and we can deploy all these guys at the same time. Like, some of them, I think, might take some juggling to make it work, like a Reuben Bain or even an Arvell Reese. Like, if he falls there and suddenly you've got to decide, like, is he off-the-ball linebacker for us, and then we kick him down and he becomes part of this. His rushing almost gets deployed as that, like, let him walk down at the line. Like, it almost looks like Jalen Walker at Georgia, where you, like, walk him down to the line, suddenly he moves out of the linebacker core, and he's just wrecked the protection.
If you had Reese and Abdul Carter,
right,
on the same,
but it's like, so theoretically, Arvell Reese is not an ideal fit for what they want/need, and yet you could. It's not that difficult, I think, to imagine them taking him, making that work, and that being a really positive pick for them. But like, those are 2 guys that I don't think would be their ideal wish list, but would potentially still be amazing picks at 5. You've got Maui Noah, who would be there, Carnell Tate, who could be there. There's no way that this draft, I think, can fall where they just get screwed and don't have a player that is ideal.
So, anyway, there's a lot of options at 5. 37, I think, is interesting for if they don't get a receiver up top. Second wave of receiver, always interesting in the second round. I think corner could be in play. Cordell Flott hitting free agency here, coming off a decent season last year. And just general questions in the secondary. Plus, with the new scheme and everything, you just want You want depth on the back end. I don't think they've gotten the best out of Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin at safety, but on paper, those guys should be good. That's why I think the Giants and Cowboys are two of those defenses that certainly underachieved last year, where you think maybe just change in scheme, change in system, that coaching might be able to get the most out of talent that's there. Because I don't think Dallas is devoid of talent. I don't think the Giants are devoid of talent on that side of the ball. There's a good chance that they're just better with the coaching change.
A lot
next
better.
year. Right. So just continue to add talent there. One question I have for you, I think John Michael Schmitz at center for the Giants underachieved a little bit compared to my expectations. I liked him coming out. Hasn't been great. Heads into year 4 of his rookie contract. The Tyler Linderbaum connection here, the most coveted center in a long, long time.
It's going to get expensive.
Looking for over $20 million a year, reportedly. Would Harbaugh bring him in to solidify the offensive line? Because if you had him, you just kick Michael JMS out the door. Illuminor, get him back. You got a pretty good line there.
Oh, you do? Yeah. I mean, that would chew up most of their money. I doubt they would do that. Maybe. I mean, maybe Harbaugh absolutely loves that guy and thinks he's everything that the team needs. And if that's the case, okay, they could make it work. But if you're going to try and upgrade at center, I would be looking more at Connor McGovern or, maybe even Ethan Pocic, based off how he played with the Browns at times.
It's also the point where JMS is a 3-year starter who's underachieved. That's the time when players just tend to improve and you just roll with it, and you've taken your lumps, and then you get better by year 4, 5, 6 here.
Right.
But look, I think O-line, they have 2 starters theoretically that they need at right guard and right tackle. And you could always use up. I know they paid John Running a couple years ago. He's okay. JMS is okay. They could still use upgrades on that line. So there's some work to do.
Even if you bring back Illuminor, I don't think that would rule you out of the tackle market in the draft. If you brought back Illuminor and yet, say in the second round, Ihonicher was still available.
There you go.
Arizona State.
Yeah.
You could draft him. It would be a little bit redundant, but you'd have insurance policy. You could potentially, he'd be replaced sooner rather than later. I don't think it would be crazy to just the insurance, the insulation of having Illuminor back, but that doesn't mean you can't still chase an upgrade.
The other rumors coming out of the combine were that the Giants wanted rumblings even, that the Giants really wanted this bell cow running back.
Yeah, it's kind of
and
strange.
The 2 names, because everybody in the top 5 was tied to Jeremiah Love, Loving Love, and the other name coming out of the Athletic article was Ken Walker, Super Bowl MVP. And here's the deal for me. The Giants are in a perfect spot running back wise.
Yes.
They are in the classic, we've got 2 rookie contract mid-round running backs who have both shown something. Cam Scatterbo, when healthy, an absolute maniac, running the ball and catching the ball out of the backfield. Tyrone Tracy, a wide receiver conversion who can run the zone scheme, get downhill. It's a really good 1-2 punch at running back for $4 million. Just thank you. John Harbaugh should just say thank you to Joe Shane for setting it up like that. The post-Saquon Barkley era at running back. Is he Saquon? Are they Saquon? No. Saquon is great in the right situation. But they played the running back situation perfectly, and I'm continuing down that path. There's, as much as we say, hey, there's a good roster, we still need more D-line depth. We have to upgrade the secondary. We have to shore up the offensive line, and I need a wide receiver too. There's way too much there that still needs to happen before I'm, spending 12 to 15 on Ken Walker or before I'm drafting Jeremiah Love at 5. So I would say no thanks on that.
I think that would be crazy for them to get into the bell cow high expense running back spot when you already have. Okay, admittedly, Scatterbo's coming back off a fairly significant injury, and who knows what exactly that will look like. But assuming a healthy Scatterbo and Tyrone Tracy, and then somebody you can add, whether it's in free agency at the bottom of the market or the draft, I think it would be nuts to instead go, no, let's spend real money at this position. Where again, they don't have a ton of cap space. They're not one of the most abundantly, financially swimming in money teams in the NFL.
All right, we in a good spot here.
Yeah.
Fix the Giants.
Done.
We gave a lot of options. Chad suggests Mike Washington Jr. I'll give you a draft score nugget, my draft score. Current iteration, he's got one of the lowest production scores I've ever seen.
Wow.
Washington. In the before, I'm missing a couple combine numbers, but number one combine, Mike Washington. So it's a tricky one for me because the production, he's got like 5x the fumbles of anyone else in the draft class. So he's as low as it gets from a production standpoint and as high as it gets from a workout perspective. Just to answer the chat on Mike Washington Jr. Do with that what you want. All right, Philadelphia Eagles up next to fix. Over the last 4 years, they have either made it to the Super Bowl or lost in the wild card round. Okay. No in between for Philadelphia, but consistently a really good team and a really good foundation. They are, I don't want to say a unique spot, but it's a different spot than they've been in previously. They drafted in high volume last year, which was needed. They're set up to do that again with 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, so 2 third-rounders in there. But less cap flexibility, I would say, than they have had in the past. So it hasn't been like a full go for it, but they've pushed a lot of money into the future over the last couple of years. There's rumors about A.J. Brown trades and them expecting a really high price. I think they only trade A.J. Brown if they are getting serious draft capital to get younger and, a lot more flexible from a money perspective over these next couple of years. I think the O-line is getting older to the point where it's like, I don't know if Lane Johnson's coming back this year. I don't know if Landon Dickerson's coming back this year. They're back. All 5 are back. So on one hand, on paper, there's a lot of talent returning again for Philadelphia, but like every offseason, it's like a couple starters that they need to fill in. And then to stay special, to stay one of the most special rosters, I think replenishing the depth. That's why they've been so good from a roster perspective over these last couple of years. They've always had replacements. So I think it's just getting a little bit more challenging to maintain that depth these last 2 years. So here we are heading into this offseason for Philly. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, the roster's still not in bad shape, but they do need to keep do need to tinker around the edges and try and bring in some of these either direct replacements for players that are hitting free agency, or I mean, this offensive line is, again, it's starting to look a little bit like Detroit's last year more than this year. Like, it's starting to become a potential concern going down the line. You've already had to juggle replacement players with, Jason Kelce retiring. Now you've got the looming, at some point, Lane Johnson's going to retire. You need to figure out his long-term replacement. Landon Dickerson was a wild, like, he might retire rumor out of nowhere.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like they're this close. So all 5 starters are back, including Tyler Steen, who did a nice job, filled in at right guard. They've just had this revolving door of right guard successful players with Mekhi Becton and Tyler Steen. And then, as you mentioned, with you don't have
Stoutland anymore.
Stoutland on the O-line. You do have that luxury of always being able to plug and play a Cam Jurgens, a Tyler Steen, and then you're good to go. Jurgens is off in some other country getting medical treatment to be healthy. Like, they're doing some work here on the lines. But all 5 starters are back. So here's my question, Sam. You have an A.J. Brown question. Could just be on the roster. Mm-hmm. Dallas Goedert's going to be gone. Definitely need a tight end. And we've been talking about them needing a tight end for a couple of years now. I do think the D-line depth has been chipped away at the last couple of years. Nakobe Dean's a free agent. Reed Blankenship. Probably need another corner. You have a few more needs than you usually have in Philly.
Yep.
But you also have the future-proofing that they've been so good at. They've always had the next defensive tackle up. They've always had the next edge rusher up. They've always had the next. They've at least thought about the next offensive line up. A guy like Jordan Mailata replacing Jason Peters. How do you balance this offseason between next year, potential retirements, aging, and the acute needs that they have, which seemingly are a little bit more than they've had in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to look at, again, free agency for the now, draft for the future. And hopefully there's some kind of combination where those come together. The Eagles tend to be pretty good at this in terms of, again, the diversifying of how you're going to bring in talent, how you're going to maintain talent on the roster. They'll do a bit of everything. And I think they just need to do a bit of everything this year.
I remain my contention that they use their first 2 picks in the trenches. That they're going back to that. They deviated a little bit, not because it was a bad move. They got legitimate players the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean at corner 2 years ago, Jihad Campbell, Andrew Makuba at safety. Makuba probably takes over, or at least has one of the starting spots here this year. So you're talking about 4 back 7 starters, 3 of them immediate impact players in the 2 corners, and Campbell we'll see on Makuba. But that's just different from what they've done in the past. And now, again, at edge rusher, Jalen Phillips walks. Interesting trade for him mid-season. And are they just going to let him walk, collect a potential comp pick off of that? If they do, Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith, all right, they're a 1-2 punch. They could both start. Hunt's made a ton of plays, especially in coverage for an edge rusher the last couple of years. But the Eagles have always been good when they're 3 deep, 4 deep at edge rusher. So that's another place they're going to have to draft TJ Parker, like everyone else in the back end of the first round. So they got to get that depth back on the D-line. That's what's made them special, and I think it's been chipped away at.
Yeah, it has. I mean,
they have a Jalen Carter deal to come up. They have a decision to make on Jordan Davis as far as his long-term deal. I think he's continued to get better.
Phillips would be interesting because he made a difference to that defense when he came in. I don't know if they want to bring him back, but if they don't bring him back, they need a Jalen Phillips kind of caliber player to come in and replace him, I think, in free agency. I mean, again, in addition to what they want to do in the draft, but maybe they'd be in the market for a guy like Boye Mafe coming out of Seattle. That type of caliber player, I think, is what they need.
I like that. I like I wonder if Charles Omenihu fits for them as a multi-gap player. I'm not sure if that's the best fit for him. I had some questions about him off field. I think depth plays, though, on the defensive line are going to be crucial, but I don't know if they're going to get the highest end player. Everyone should buy Marcus Davenport for $2 million just in case.
No, not anymore.
Just in case.
Time to move on.
We're done with that game now. Yeah. The Ebiketie thing that you mentioned earlier too, like as the depth play, but he'd be a good 3. Is that enough with Hunt and Nolan Smith? Maybe. And then what do you do with AJ Brown? Do you try to trade him and take a cap hit? And
it's a huge cap hit.
It is. That's why they're asking for a massive haul.
Yeah. I feel like they're stuck with him, at least for now.
Which isn't the worst thing in the world.
No, I mean, you need to work on the relationship.
Did you feel like he lost a half step and wasn't as good? Or do we get back to this whole, the offense feels bland?
I mean, there's that. The half step thing, I felt like there were plays where he just took it off last year, and that was the problem. Jason Kelsey was on some show saying, he's unfortunately one of these players who just doesn't hide his displeasure well, and that can seep into other things and seep into other players as well, and that's where it becomes a problem. I didn't actually feel like that for most of the time that A.J. Brown has been reported to be unhappy, but I think later in the year it did start to look like he was not playing for some plays. And at times where not even plays where the ball's going somewhere else and he's just mailing it in or whatever. It's plays where the ball's coming his way and he's not even going all out to go catch it. It's that's where it's a real problem. I don't really care if you're not playing hard when the ball's going to somebody else on the other side of the field. I do kind of care when the ball's in the air and you're like, nah, I can take it or leave it. That's when I need you to go be A.J. Brown and go get the ball. Right. And he wasn't always doing that. So that, I think, is where it becomes a real problem. Now, if you can just reset that in the offseason and say, we all said some things we were upset about, AJ, let's get this back on track and, you can repair the relationship and get everything back going, then A.J. Brown, I think, is still a very good wide receiver that makes everything better.
So let's get to that. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, what has made this team, one of the reasons that they're so good, we talk about the trenches and the O-line and the D-line. When the Eagles go to the Super Bowl, they're really good on the perimeter too, whether it's 2017, 2022, 2024. When they are a Super Bowl caliber team, either winning or competing in it, they're very good on the perimeter. 24, they drafted the corners and they got so much better on the outside. They've always had this foundation in the trenches, but when you can win through the air, both sides of the ball, that's what makes the Eagles in particular, in this roster construction, it's what's made them special. and they still have that good foundation with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So you'll need a wide receiver 3 option, which never has to be great. It's just, hey, injury, if there's injury situations, just having a third option in the pass game, that might be more necessary now with Dallas Goedert out. And, he's always been the third option from a pass game perspective. So they might need a legitimate wide receiver 3 and a tight end to complement those 2 receivers. So that'd be something to keep an eye on here as well.
The Eagles, by the way, are the single most salary cap hamstrung team in the NFL this year. They're the new Saints.
They're at $15 million with no flexibility, right?
None. Right. They have whereas everybody else can free up something in the region of $30 million minimum in terms of restructures and stuff. The Eagles can free up $200,000.
So it's a lot like what I said.
Yeah, they can cut players and and free up space that way, but they can't free up space without actually getting rid of people from the roster.
Right. So that again, it's a different spot than they've been in the past. In the past, we would come into an offseason and be like, "Hey, Jason Kelce's retiring. Can Cam Jurgens replace him?"
Which is another reason, by the way, where I think the A.J. Brown trade isn't happening because it's not just it's painful for them to get rid of him in a serious way.
It is financially, but is that part of the reset where, say they could get a 1 for A.J. Brown and a 4, whatever you can get? Are the draft picks part of getting the finances back in order? They've been pushing the card.
Yeah.
They've been working it hard on the credit card.
I think they're still too good for that. I think they're too good for that. I don't think Sirianni would survive any kind of, moderate reset. And now maybe Howie doesn't care, but I just don't think they're going to take that approach. I don't see why they would.
So let's assume A.J. Brown's still on the team. You have limited moves you can make in free agency, and it comes back to the draft. Well, they draft 10 or 11 times last year. And
4 picks in the top 100 this year.
Yeah.
23, 54, 68, and 98.
Hit on your picks, man.
Yeah.
I think edge rusher in play with that first pick.
I ran through a quick one.
Yeah, what you got?
I got Caden Proctor in the first round on the offensive line, and then in the second and third, I got both impressive combine performance pass rushes and Malachi Lawrence from UCF and the dentist denied Dennis Sutton from Penn State in the third. And then also in the third, bottom of the third, I got tight end Sam Roush from Stanford, who was the spectacular athletic tight end that no one will remember was spectacularly athletic because he did it sandwiched between 2 guys that were all-time athletic.
We have
also had stumpy little T-Rex arms, though, which doesn't help.
We have a long astute email on Roush that I don't know if I glanced at it.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, check it out. It's got some more information beyond the workout. It's production. Check it out. I like it. So you got the 2 edge. I mean, I think that's a realistic scenario where they're going.
He's the new
O-line and a couple D linemen.
Roush is the new extreme version though of arm length, right? His 6'6" at 30, whatever it is.
What was he?
He was 6'6" and had 30. Let's find out what it actually is. No, but his are shorter than Aiden Hutchinson's.
That's no tangent.
His are shorter than Aiden Hutchinson's, significantly so, at an inch shorter in height.
Great. Get him in Philadelphia. Anything else on the Eagles? We're running it back with A.J. Brown.
30 and 5/8. That's 6'6".
Let's blame them. Blame the tailor.
Mine are 32 and a half.
Stop.
At 5'11".
Stay focused. Wrapping up the Eagles. Get back to drafting in the trenches. Get this roster back a little bit younger. It's a big draft for the Eagles. Hit on some of those picks that you just mentioned. I love that back-to-back edge rush drafting that you just did there. Need a corner somewhere. Second wave of free agency there. Replace Blankenship and safety. Second wave of free agency. Got to get cheaper.
They're going to have to find some bargains because they don't have a ton of money to spend now.
And they do. Remember, they stole James Bradbury. Got cut, and they that is it's not just second wave of free agency. It's the third and fourth wave. It's post cuts. You could find starters there, and I think they'll be able to do that on the cheap, and that's what they do that really well.
Yeah, who are realistic cut candidates for this team? On the basis that's the only way they can free up money.
They could bring in Marlon Humphrey as a cut candidate, maybe on the cheap.
No. I mean, for them, who could
them?
They actually cut from their roster that would save money because that's the only way they can generate cap space? Not many people, actually. This is why they're not in great shape from a roster or from a salary cap standpoint.
Dickerson?
Yeah, you'd eat a ton of dead cap.
What's he at?
Money though.
Juergens. They have four offensive linemen over 20 million AAV. I'm sorry, over 17 million. Juergens is 17. And the 2 receivers. Yeah,
there's basically nobody they can cut that doesn't also bring a ton of dead cap hit.
Got hit in the draft this year. All right, anything else?
No.
On the Eagles? Are they fixed?
Sure.
Did we fix everybody? We talked through scenarios. Did we fix everybody? Washington Commanders are next up to wrap it up. Commanders, 2 years removed from the NFC Championship under Dan Quinn. Year 2 did not go as well. Weren't as good. Plus, Jaden Daniels getting hurt, and now they're picking 7th overall in the draft. 9-8. Were they 9-8 last year? That doesn't sound right. A lot of money though. It's been an interesting couple of years for Washington. Year 1, they under Adam Peters as GM. Year 1, high volume drafting. Last year, I think they came away with only 5 draft picks. They went in with 4. This year, they've got 6, and they have spent their rookie contract years with Jaden Daniels. They've spent them on the Bobby Wagners, the Frankie Louvu's of the world. They make an aggressive move for Marshawn Lattimore, and doesn't work out. Doesn't look great down the stretch in 24 and last year. And he's out, released. I don't know if it's official or if it's just going to be official next Wednesday, but he's out in Washington. So Adam Peters has gone the veteran route early on. I think they had success with it in year 1, where you look at the NFC Championship run and it's like, hey, look at all these Bobby Wagner and Louvu contributions that they got here. And then in year 2, it's like, now they feel old and slow. Deebo Samuel didn't work, and Marshawn Lattimore didn't work. And so that's how quickly it hits. And when you do that, then you look back, it's like, uh-oh, where's the young nucleus? But they're in a position where they have the cap flexibility, though, so they can spend in free agency while they're getting younger. So it's not like they're like with Miami or even Philly right now, where it's like you don't have a ton of moves to make as far as big names. Washington can do both. So they can stick with the veteran route while they're building that foundation back up again with the youth movement.
Yeah, it's not a good-looking roster.
Well, it wasn't when they made the NFC Championship either.
Right.
They overachieved that year.
And then even then, it wasn't last year either.
Right.
They added talent to it.
So I give them credit for making it, but last year at this time, we're like, hey, I hate to tell you this, Commanders fans. Like, you're not a couple players away either. You're in regression territory, and they went for it. They went for it with Laramie Tunsil. They went for it with Deebo Samuel, which were fine moves. I didn't hate those moves, but it felt like, wait, it's not a great pass rush. They're not great on the defensive line. I don't think they did enough there last year, and now it's even worse than it was a year ago.
They did that thing. I think it's fine. I think trading draft picks for veteran players is not a bad way. Like Houston, right? Houston, actually, no, that's maybe not a good example because of the confusing tweet that seems to suggest a 5th-round pick is worth more than the 4th-round pick.
I think the terms just changed after Rap Sheet, and he was like, oh, that's 5th-round value. I misunderstood. Yeah. The terms changed after the initial report. Anyway.
Right. Either way, his tweet is misleading and silly. What was the trade that happened before? The Titus Howard trade, right? Like a 5th round, the Browns. So the Browns trading a 5th-round pick for Titus Howard. I think that's good in isolation. When you do that a few times, though, and you traded half your draft for veteran players, I think you need to get those picks back because you still need those picks. Like the picks, turning a mid-round pick into the sure thing of a veteran player at a solid level is a good thing, but I don't think you want to do that endlessly and never have draft picks because even the good, solid NFL player isn't as valuable as a player that you might hit in the 5th round. Because if you hit on that guy, he's getting paid nothing, and that's hugely valuable to your salary cap. So where possible, if you know you're going to flip a bunch of picks for some veteran players, figure out a way of backfilling those draft picks. Yeah. The Rams always did this really well, right? Which is the FDM picks era of Les. They always went and got themselves, well, let's go trade down and let's make sure we're picking like 8 times in the draft or 8 times on day 3 or whatever, and just throw some darts and see what sticks. And they got a bunch of contributors out of those draft picks. Washington they went with those trades, and now they don't have a lot of draft picks. And now they're like, well, it's not that the trades didn't necessarily work, because some of them did, but like the totality of what they didn't work. And now you're staring at a draft where you just don't have that much draft capital. That's where it starts to really hit hard.
But they're still in a spot where it's like, again, it's not like a lot of times when you go the veteran route, you just have no money. Like at some point you run out of money.
Right.
They have both now.
They have money, but they also don't have many players.
No, I get it. And so it's not a great young nucleus. So
like of key cornerstone pieces that you want to build around. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, Samuel Cosme, and Laramie Tunsil, I think, are both high-end players. Obviously, they paid Terry McLaurin last offseason finally, so that's done and locked in. After that, it's like, who else are we building around here? Sammer still on defense.
The defense was that was the place where they weren't actually good on defense in 2024, but they made it to the NFC Championship, and they made a little bit of a run, but they were never really good on that side of the ball. They had a lot of sacks. They were playing with leads. I think it's the D line. They spent a lot, $15 million on Javon Kinlaw last year. They've got Daron Payne for a lot of money.
Yeah,
they've been okay. So you've got to get better up front. And pass rush was not good. I mean, I don't think it was great 2 years ago, despite the sack totals.
Dorrance Armstrong has been their best defensive lineman, like their best front player, and he hasn't been great.
Yeah.
Like
so
the money that they've got invested in that is producing almost nothing in return.
So I think with the money to play with, I think they could be in the Oway sweepstakes. I think they could be playing for the big name defensive linemen.
They're the team that should be out there for what passes for the star players in this free agent class.
And really quick, I would say hard no for them on the Max Crosby deal.
Right.
That would be too much of going all in on the veteran players. I wouldn't do that. Now, by the way, the Bears are, I guess, heavy favorites. We'll talk about them this week. Heavy favorites for Max Crosby. I think their roster might be in a different spot where there's just more pieces in place in key areas, and then it's like, all right, plop the pass rusher in there and you'll be okay. I don't know if Washington has that ability. So I'd go the free agent route. Spend in free agency. You still have a couple years of cost-controlled Jaden Daniels. You could still spend in free agency, but you can't do it while also giving up draft picks.
They should be chasing hard for a Dafe Oway. They should be in the Jalen Phillips market. They should be potentially looking for a John Franklin Myers, who can still be a really useful rotation player.
Like that.
They should be overspending effectively on these players and outbidding people because they need them.
Corner is a big issue as well.
Man, I would not want to be needing
I think they're in a good spot at 7, by the way. I really like the teams picking at 7. Like if, arm length gate keeps dropping Bain, and I'd be happy with him. And I'm happy with Carnell Tate because they need a wide receiver too.
Reek Woolen they should overpay for.
Reek Woolen?
Yeah.
How would he be? Yeah, with Quinn. I like that. I like that at corner. Let's do that. We get Reek Woolen. Let's get some athletic freaks on that side of the ball, including Bain.
Let's do their draft. See what we hit.
Get to the draft. Oh man! So you go with a Woolen and maybe a second tier free agent corner. Let Mikey play the slot only. Now they got they have Amos there. I think he was in a challenging role last year, playing a lot of press. I think Amos would be fine as a second rounder, but I think Woolen complimenting him.
So this is what I mean. 2 picks in the first 3 rounds, it's not fun.
It doesn't feel good when the roster is not in great shape.
That being said, this draft
Who'd you get?
Arvell Reese fell to 7, so obviously I took that. And then in the third round, I got
Frankie Louvu.
Yeah, and in the third round, I got Zachariah Branch, the wide receiver from Georgia.
So Branch is, he's like your Wandale, undersized receiver, gimmicky type of player. At least fills a playmaking role.
Yeah, compliments
on that
McLaurin. Like it's not revolutionizing your offense or anything, but it's a useful player to add.
More rumblings from the combine. I know they've got Bill Krosky Merritt, but the rumblings that they want the bell cow. They want
everybody wants the bell.
They want the bruiser. Maybe not a bell cow, but more of a bruiser.
In an era where everybody runs by committee, all of a sudden everyone wants their Belichick.
So the quick Jeremiah Love discussion, because we had it yesterday. We gave him love in the mock draft. So many fan bases are like, that guy's going to fix our offense. But then you look at where the other holes are on the roster, and it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good. Again, The one exception I'll make, if I'm trying to talk myself into it, is you put Jaden Daniels and Jeremiah Love into the same backfield, and there's a force multiplier aspect of having a 4'3", 215-pound back next to Jaden Daniels, one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL. And maybe he ends up being one of the best QBs in the NFL if he gets back on track.
With Washington's lack of draft capital, drafting Jeremiah Love at 7 and doing nothing else in terms of backfilling that, it would be
malpractice.
Absolute malpractice. It would be genuinely ridiculous.
I'm not saying I'm doing it, so I'm not. That's not part of our solution. I'm just telling you that is.
That would be the worst possible.
I wouldn't even want
to draft Jeremiah Love.
I wouldn't even. I'm a big Jonah Coleman fan, and I don't. I'll say the same thing that I said about the Giants. I think they've got the perfect running back situation. You got Bill Krosky-Merritt, you got Chris Rodriguez. I don't care if you don't think either one is great. A 1-2 punch of cheap running backs where Jaden Daniels is already affecting the defense from a run game perspective, I think you're fine. Just deploy resources elsewhere.
Genuinely the only worse misallocation of a draft pick I could come up with in terms of drafting Jeremiah Love would be the Raiders at number 1 overall. That would be an error, right? For multiple reasons, but all of which are self-evident. The Jets at number 2. Those are the only 2 I think that would be worse than Washington. Arizona drafting him at 3 would be less crazy than that. Tennessee.
Titans have way too
Tennessee would be bad,
needs.
but I still think it's less bad than Washington because they have more draft picks. And I genuinely think the only 2 that would be worse than Washington taking him at 7 would be the Raiders and the Jets at 1 and 2. Utterly crazy would be Jeremiah Love at 7. Not because zero indication of Jeremiah Love as a player, but because Washington has so many needs and doesn't have the draft picks to support it. Taking a running back at that spot would be nuts.
Free agent, yeah, I think we're not doing it. We did it yesterday, but we're not going to do it.
Did we do
they
that
released,
for them?
They released Tyler Biadasz.
Was that part of our pick?
We did Love. Yeah, we had Love yesterday. It's predictive. It's a guess. We're just guessing. We were reading the rumblings. We were going off the rumblings. I'm saying I disagree with the rumblings.
The rumblings are crazy. That's
crazy.
Utter lunacy.
They released Tyler Biadasz, which, by the way, he was part of that, that's a really good signing in 2024.
And they just decided they
now he's gone. But that adds another hole up front. They need probably a center and a left guard. I wonder if Connor McGovern from the Bills, if he's available, Ethan Pocic from the Browns. I don't know if they'd be in the Linderbaum sweepstakes or not. They have the money to play there.
They're one of the few teams that could do that, yeah.
And then if they did, you talked about if you have Tunsil and Linderbaum and Cosme and first-rounder Josh Connerly, who was fine as a rookie. That's a really good offensive line. If you really want to turn the line into a strength and then you plop a starting left guard in there, it's not bad. So there's a chance, they actually have a chance to make it's not really the Bears move last year where the Bears, they could break the O-line a serious strength, though, if they want.
Their offense could get good pretty quickly.
Yes.
The defense is so much work needed, though.
Plus, if you are going to go defensive side of the ball at 7, what do you do at wide receiver 2 next to Terry McLaurin?
Again, yeah.
You mentioned Dobbs earlier, Juwan Jennings. Do you want
all the wide receiver 2s in the free agency? Yeah.
Get a wide receiver like Rashid Shaheed? Do you just want the Rashid Shaheed with Jaden Daniels deep ball is intriguing, but if I could get, and again, love Carnell Tate, I think there'll be a defensive playmaker to grab at 7. So if you can get wide receiver 2 in free agency, shore up the offensive line, sprinkle in some starters on the defensive side of the ball so you can get into at least drafting the best players available, hopefully in the trenches.
Juwan Jennings is interesting here given the San Francisco connection.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great addition. Juwan Jennings, Rashid Shaheed for a different reason, Romeo Dobbs, these guys, Christian Kirk even would be a pretty interesting addition there. They need someone that can come in and be, a legitimate threat opposite Terry McLaurin.
Well, let's wrap it up with this. Given the San Francisco connection, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but do they go Brandon Ayuk? And think about it.
Sure.
As Bobby if they bring him into Miami. Anyone who's ever known but Brandon Ayuk, is that more or less likely that you're bringing him in?
Again, to me, the Brandon Ayuk thing is an absolute wild X factor for a team that's pretty desperate and doesn't have options. I don't think that's where Washington would go, even with the San Francisco connection, though, maybe who knows what that connection is. It's such an X factor in the offseason, though, because he's like a top 10 caliber receiver.
Yeah.
Who's probably available for almost nothing because he just blew up his entire existence in San Francisco for seemingly no good reason.
It's a big wild card.
It's a full throwback to crazy 90s wide receivers where they were all nuts, right? That tweet, the classic wide receiver tweet of walk quietly and carry a big gun or whatever. They're nuts. They used to be, only now they're not really. Actually, most wide receivers these days are pretty middle-of-the-road, normal professionals, and then A.J. Brown reads a book on the sideline, and we act like it's the same as these guys who were utter crazy lunatics in the 90s, right? There was a story of Michael Irvin almost shanking a guy over a haircut or whatever it was in Jeff Pearlman's stuff. These are not the same, right? A guy reading a book versus a guy having to have, attacking a guy with a pair of scissors covered up by the team. These are very different behavior patterns. And yet, Brandon Ayuk is a full throwback to crazy 90s.
Brandon Ayuk throwback. All right, I think we solved Washington. Got to spend a lot of time on the defense this offseason, particularly in the draft. Multiply your draft picks, Washington, as much as you can. Got to get younger. Allegretti can play center. I agree. Nick Allegretti could be the center, just saying. If he's the starter, then you go left guard. But they could make a power move on the offensive line as well. All right, we good?
Yeah. They should be throwing a lot of money around in free agency because they need it.
Yeah, they're in all while trying to multiply the picks and get younger at the same time and get the long-term. Because at some point you got to pay Jaden Daniels. You got to set those free agent contracts to expire in a couple of years here. All right, there we go. 8 teams down, a quarter of the way through the league. That was good. That was on point. That was about 15 minutes per team. How'd we do, Will? Will, when we told Will we're going to do 15 minutes per team and we're going to be on point, he's like, no way. He's like, no way. There'll be rugby rants, baseball rants. We'll talk about 90s wide receivers. We saved it. We stayed on point. Can we do it for 4 straight days? We shall see. We're fixing every team in 5 minutes. It's really 15 to 20. Appreciate everybody being here. AFC and NFC East today. What do we have tomorrow? 2 more divisions tomorrow. So tomorrow at 9, Thursday at 9, Friday at 9, going through every single team, every division this week. Mm-hmm. All right, that's it for us today. We'll see you again tomorrow. More Fix It Every Team. Check the mic.